Overtired. So tired. Overtired.
This episode is brought to you by Notion. Stay tuned for more info. Hey, you're listening to Overtired. I'm Brett Terpstra. I'm here as usual with Christina Warren and Jeff Severance-Gunsel. We have a special guest this week. I'd like to welcome Merlin Mann. How's it going, Merlin?
It's going great. Hi, team.
Hey. So we've been
It's not really abrupt. I'm trying to be efficient because we had a really nice conversation for 15 minutes before, and I have to act like we're just starting. Hey, you guys,
we're going
how's it
to
going?
ease in. Yeah, we just talked for 20 minutes before the show, and we're going to try to capture some of that magic again.
In a way that's really organic and nobody will think.
Yeah, you'll totally feel it. It won't be like recreating stuff. No,
you're gonna love this, everybody.
We got Merlin to open Chrome today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think I just got some new credit cards or something. I'm not sure. I opened Chrome and
that's on
You
us.
could have used Arc.
Yeah. I think
Brave.
I took a photo of my balls. I'm not sure.
We had to take that out of.
You're on video, which is probably rare for you when you're recording a podcast.
I'm gonna tell you something. I used to be on a podcast a long time ago, and it was a pretty well-known, like popular podcast. And at one point, they stopped doing just straight up Skype and started going to doing like video, but for an audio product. And I just think that if you have video on, I get it, but if you don't release that as video, there's a huge component of it that people are missing, and it's not so like that's okay. But then the problem is you get so used to it that you start saying things or doing things like some of the faces I'm making, and like I can point at Jeff over here and like that kind of stuff, which will not go through to the listener. And I think that can make a less good show. But this show I feel very strongly about. This is I'm happy to be on video at 10:20 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
I was
obviously I was able to get to my stylist and pick my fourth favorite Roderick on the Line shirt. So
I also got to a stylist. The joke here, listeners, is I'm just wearing like a North Face like beanie, and
I recognize that it's from that Italian stylist. I think her name is Ilaria Hatt. I think so.
Oh man.
I've tried to convince these guys to record video and put out like a YouTube version of the show, and it has not gone over well. They're both shaking their heads right now.
Absolutely not.
I think as long as you understand it's a different thing,
yes,
it's good.
Yeah,
you look nice today. We did video, and I thought it turned out pretty good considering it was the lockdown. And but like as long as you understand the parameters, a phrase I use that I won't go into, but in the world of podcasts, I call it the little world. Each podcast I love tends to have a little world. It's got voices that I like in it. It's got bits. It's got stuff. I yell at it. I yell at the guys on Accidental Tech podcast all the time because they're uniformly horrible. But that's their little world. You decide what comes into the little world. But if you never get a bead on what your little world is, you never let it become the thing that it is. Like you just start throwing stuff at it for what you regard as metrics. See, now I'm Holden Caulfield. It's so nice to be here on video with you. And
Hi, Holden, friend of the show, Holden Caulfield.
I would.
My Twitter, but my bio on Neston for a while was lifestyle Holden Caulfield. You've never seen so many phonies in your whole
life. So I would like to make a correction at the top of the show. I said last week that Axeman was in Minneapolis. Which
the Marvel comic,
and I let you say
it. And our friend of the show, Harold, he let me know in no uncertain terms that Axeman was in St. Paul. So forgive me for that.
I love that. My favorite thing of seeing shows in St. Paul is how many times the bands go. It's great to be in Minneapolis. Harold,
yeah. I don't want to call Harold pedantic because he would definitely tell me I was using the word wrong.
Actually, it's pronounced pedant. En français.
Well, Merlin, you and Dan used to. You had a funny bit about my last name.
I think, and we stopped because
I know
a little hurtful.
Because
a little hurtful.
I was somehow offended, and then I was a dick about it. I'm sorry. It was actually an honor.
In that little world.
What was the bit?
Well,
but
we've got funny ways we say things. Like anything that's got B's in it is always funny. We're like Bluetooth. like bulk bag. There's just
Bat
certain
boom,
words
yeah.
that are just funny. And every time I'd say, oh my God, blah, 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 I have all these services and like QED. Sorry if it's your first time tuning in. Brett runs my life. Like whether that's
Same.
marked, and like there's just so much stuff in my life that is Brett stuff or Brett adjacent stuff. And I would constantly be like, oh, but there's this service that lets you just select some text and then that adds the kind of markdown bullets that you like to it. And Brett Terpstra, and he goes, Terpstra, Brett Terpstra. And he'd say it like that, but he did it very percussively. Like Terpstra. Anyway, sorry about that.
Name.
It was meant in love, but it
I got that after you stopped doing it. I'm like, holy shit, I never should have.
It's like people saying to me, like the magician, and I say, yeah, like the magician, which I'd never heard before. Thank
Brett,
you.
do you want to regain your power and just speak your name to Merlin right now?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
No.
They call me Mr. Terpstra.
I abdicate my power. So we at the top of most shows, we do a mental health corner. And for the last 2 episodes, that mental health corner has run like an hour. And it's supposed to be like 15 minutes. So if it's going to run long, I want it to be Merlin's fault. So what we do is we check in on our mental health. All 3 of the regular hosts have their own diagnoses. And we talk about how things are going.
From some kind of an accredited professional, or more like I'm pretty sure I'm OCD.
We work out of DSM-1.
I'm OCD.
So I would like to turn it over. Merlin, how are you doing this week?
Me first?
Yeah. Because if this runs long, I want it to be your fault.
No.
And if it's short, great.
Well, this is almost all I talk about, so I'll try to keep it brief. But my mental health, pretty good. I have an ongoing project that I'm going to just go ahead and kind of mention just for context, because it's something I'm trying to socialize, which is like there's just a whole bunch of stuff in my life where I've had a reason to become more aware of certain aspects of my mental health. Something my friend John at Syracuse introduced to me, something called the XY problem, which has become like kind of instrumental in my life, is like you want help from somebody. And so you say you have a problem with X, but that expert would be in a position to tell you sometimes after minutes or hours that actually you have a problem with Y. To paraphrase Stephen Covey, you have your ladder against the wrong wall in that sense. And things like trauma, issues with authority, things like that. I've just realized I think that's something I'm really turning over a lot right now is the role of shame in our lives, and how at least I feel like I'm 57. So like the way I was raised, not intentionally, I don't think, but like there's just so much shame in all of our lives. And I'm starting to wonder about the extent to which that shame drives some of our lesser angels in how we're motivated, how we talk to ourselves, obviously very importantly, but also like the kinds of like we're carrying water for gym teachers in 1978 sometimes. Mm-hmm. And so that's something, pardon me, I'm getting over a cold. That's something where like I had a big health thing that I've been dealing with. And one aspect of that, and having to be in the hospital for 3 days, was for the first time, ever, was like just confronting this whole way of like, well, how much do you drink? Did you know your blood pressure is high? Did you know you haven't had a colonoscopy in too long? And it's just like all these things that are meant to be, even like honestly on the label, useful things from a person, are so often usually unintentionally grounded in shame, reiterating shame. And ultimately, at least this is where I get real weird, is in the way people unintentionally, as a society, as a culture, as a tribe, teach us a certain kind of shame that we eventually learn to carry and put onto ourselves and consequently put on others. And if you've ever wondered about that, ask your parents why they're how they were. And there's a pretty good chance your parents were how they were because their parents made them ashamed about it. So now when we yell at our kids about screen time, whatever that means, like when we yell at our kids about stuff, we're basically saying something that we hope impresses a dead parent. So that's something I think about a lot right now, and I'm operationalizing as a project to, as I explained recently on another show, is like this 2-track approach of like, continuing to try and become a better person and a more wholesome person and a more kind person. And again, kindness is a lot about what you don't do in life. It's not stuff people see. A lot of your writing is writing you don't do. People won't see. realizing you don't need to write, all those kinds of like those complex like internal voyages we take. So my mental health is pretty good considering.
Sure.
But that's a thing I'm thinking about a lot right now. How are you guys?
Well,
Matt, can I?
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead.
Yeah, talk
I was going to say the thing about carrying the shame that is in a way carrying the shame of a parent. There was a thing a therapist said to me a long time ago, and it was like this. It was this thing to say, right? It's always kind of funny to say these things out loud, and especially in public, but it really hits there, which is like to find a way to hand it back in a way that doesn't feel like resentful. She was like, I have been carrying this for you out of love, and I return it to you now with deep
what are the numerous burdens we get from people that we love, whether that's something that somebody regards as an heirloom that's been sitting in a basement for 10 years that you've been saving for some reason. There's all these things that we give to somebody, but you're right. But how do you, the turning back is such an interesting idea. Like, I understand so much, I feel like, about, it's always an evolving understanding of why the people in my life are how they are. I think, in particular, my mom's husband died when we were all pretty young, including my dad. And like, she just, I think, could never bear the idea of loss, of like losing me in particular. Like, I was the last thing she had apart from the Pontiac. And like, how do you do that without being a little bit of a nut? And sometimes the more we care about somebody in our head, the way I would phrase it, I would never say this publicly, but the way I would phrase it is like, no, really just kind of talk yourself into being a nut about something, but because it comes from a good place, that's who you are now. And it's the turning it back part is so interesting, but like, I don't know. There's a phrase I picked up somehow a long time ago, which is instrumental again for me. Stupid can't stick to me. It's like I get to define the terms of my personal integrity, and I get to decide whose BS I'm going to carry around. So whether that goes for news articles, I don't need to see, anger about Twitter or like whatever it is. There's just all this stuff where I've learned to become a little more reflective about that and go, I can understand that, but that doesn't mean I have to eat a plate of it all the time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
God, you sound like someone who's been through therapy. Do you do therapy?
I was gonna say this is definitely sounding like therapy talk, which is, I don't mean in a derogatory way at all. Like,
no,
I think
we all love therapy.
We all love therapy.
It's so interesting and so ironic, because no, I don't do talk therapy, but I don't have time to go into it. It's a corner.
Yeah, you
it's a
pick
very
up
small
all this
corner.
wisdom. Like,
I do pick up a lot of wisdom. That's true.
Yeah.
The but like that book, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, has just I think about it more than anything I've read since Getting Things Done. For people who know the Merlin podcast universe, like I think about The Body Keeps the Score constantly, and not because I'm a Vietnam vet, but because so much we understand or think we understand about how we got how we are is elides some. I'm not going to be like that guy who's like, yeah, well, it's all like medical. It is all medical, but the problem is like your brain is trying so hard to help you. And the more we feed it the stuff that we think is helping, it's like drinking salt water. It's not actually going to quench your thirst. You're just a guy on a boat drinking the ocean. But that feels like the right thing to do. And that book, which is about trauma and the way that trauma kind of leaves a mark on you in an invisible but very real way. Not just about trauma, but if I had one pitch to make, well, first of all, I'd say listen to that interview with Ezra Klein with Bessel van der Kolk. That's what got me into it. Really good interview, like a life-changing interview for me. But also that it's interesting. Part of the thrust of the book that I hate to spoil is that, yeah, I know you think you don't have trauma. I know. That's the point. The point is that your body and your mind, which are actually highly related, your brain is doing everything it can to keep you from being sad, to keep you from being expelled by the tribe for pointing out that the priest touched your tutor. Like whatever it is, there's stuff in your body and your mind that represent adaptations over, millions of years. And so when we say we don't have trauma, well, it's because that's how the body keeps the score. Is that like you teach yourself to believe that only people who are in Treblinka had trauma, and you're like, well, no. If you really accept that, you've been re-injured in this same spot thousands of times, sometimes without anything actually happening. Anybody here ever been scared when the phone rings?
Oh yeah.
I don't know why you're scared when the phone rings. I
Yep.
know that I am too, and I know that that is far from a unique thing that only
No,
millennials suffer from.
usually what it is that it, and it's like any sort of, PTSD or whatever, is that you've had like an event that was triggered, the really negative thing that was triggered when someone called you, and you had that experience, and like so, and
Yeah.
it's recreated when
I'm
that
about to
happens
be
again.
evicted, or my mom is dead.
Right. Well, I was going to
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
I do still sometimes have, like, when my mom calls me, to this day, I'll never forget, because when she, like, the worst phone call I've ever received was when my aunt and uncle died 2 days after Thanksgiving, and it was completely unexpected. And
You
I'm
can't
getting get
prepare for
emotional
that.
even
You
talking
can't
about
prepare
it.
for that.
No, you can't. And in that case, it was the thing that I guess, like, I have residual issues over, and I'm again, like, just you have the emotional response, even like thinking back all these years later, is I will never forget the sound of her voice. And
Mm.
that was like
And Christina, I'll
the
bet
worst thing I've ever heard.
you never want that news again, but you also never want to hear your mom sound
Well,
like
that's really what it is.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it has the news is the less important aspect, because the part of that is still emotional for me is my mom's reaction and knowing how she felt. And
Mhm.
so there are times that, yeah, like the phone will ring and it's my mom, and like, I'll do like a little deep breath, because you're like, okay, am I ever going? Because I do know, unfortunately, that I will probably hear her sound that way again.
Sure.
And so
and it happens in your
yeah,
head or in life. It happens when the phone rings.
right,
I
right,
So, like,
and so
why is
that
everybody
sets
so
it
many
up.
weird about, like, somebody ringing the doorbell? You millennials are all avocado toast or whatever, and it's like, well,
Yeah,
no, I've very much been that person. I've very much been that person of, like, trigger warnings, like, fucking grow up. Like, I've been that person, and I have become more vulnerable and open to the idea that it doesn't matter. But, like, I think there's so many unnecessary negativities that inhabit our lives that we unintentionally um, give to others, but also are constantly looking for a way to put on ourselves. And a lot of us are having a pretty weird day before the phone rings, and like,
Yeah.
if there's one way I try to describe the anxiety that I have, and as partly as a component, I think, of my ADHD, is that I experience a lot of things much more deeply than other people, especially negative things.
yeah,
And more saliently, it sticks with me a lot longer. And that's why
yeah,
it becomes a very lonely journey to try and explain to somebody why you don't like the phone ringing. And that turns
Mhm.
into, like, again, this thing of like, oh, Gen Z is however. But no, it's like you can't really describe it to people, not least because we are not encouraged to interrogate why that is. We are not encouraged to figure out, on the one hand, like, it's not an unalloyed good or easy thing to just have some journey and go, like, well, I've decided this is, this kind of like Irish Catholic version of therapy, where you, like, have an afternoon and then, like, okay, now go back to your craziness. Like, it's very difficult to try and locate that in yourself, let alone articulate to somebody that you care about.
right.
But it
so
comes out as I'm mad at everybody sometimes. Like, again, Vanderkolk talks about this. Why are these Vietnam vets coming back? They're so screwed up. But why do they have bursts of anger? Why, something I said
They've been
Yeah.
holding
the
it
other
in because
day.
they have to pretend like they're okay for so long, and
Yeah,
then
and
and then
totally
it can't
unprocessed.
do anything else,
Yeah.
so it just will
But
burst
also,
out.
that, like, when I heard fight or flight as talking
Yeah,
about the autonomic responses. I've heard about fight or flight most of my life. I
or
didn't hear
freeze.
until that book was Freeze. And I think
Yeah.
Freeze
Freeze.
needs a lot more
Yep.
widespread
Yeah.
understanding with
I
people,
only learned
that if
about
something
freeze
physically
recently.
happened to you and you were held down, I'm not even saying it
Mhm.
has to be that, but
Mhm.
that feeling of, I can't escape from how this is right now. And that's
Yep.
pretty close to how I feel when I don't have panic attacks per se, but that's pretty close to how I feel when the phone rings, is
Yep.
like, what is happening right now will be the worst thing that ever happened to me, and it will last forever, and I know I won't be able to handle it.
Yeah.
That's how it is. And I bet more people are like that than they'd like to admit.
I've
oh,
probably
totally.
talked about this before, but both of my grandfathers died on the same day. And
What?
That's
so
so crazy.
my maternal grandfather lived with us in the house I was in when I was 12. And I woke up to the ambulances carting him out after a heart attack. And so my mom's already down. I've seen her cry for maybe the first time ever. And then the phone rings. and my dad picks it up, and it is the only time I've ever seen my dad cry. Like, to this day, it is the only time, when he found out his father was dead, also of a heart attack, on the same day. It was,
And
it was one of
it's
those phone
interesting how
calls.
some of these stories, including Christina's, including yours, a lot of mine, and this comes up, I think, in some of your better media, is like, yeah, I don't want crappy things to happen to me. Like, I don't want, for example, I watched something recently where somebody was very brutally beat up. And the thing about it was, like, the thing that made it difficult for them and for the kid who saw it was the kid eventually understood. The kid, that guy, he didn't want to get beat up. My dad didn't want to get beat up, but what he really didn't want was for me to have to see it, to see him in that state. There's something about seeing people we love in a very vulnerable and being hurt and vulnerable, and us knowing there's nothing that we can do about it. How that's a kind of a form of freeze in some ways, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I started talking about fight or flight to my therapist, and she clarified that it's fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
And that was news to me at the time. I'm like, actually, that explains a lot of what I go through when I talk to my parents, when I get, triggered by religious stuff and things that have caused me trauma in the past.
And shame.
I freeze. I do. Yeah. Shame for sure. I like Merlin, you haven't listened to the show for a while, but I was recently diagnosed with PTSD. Oh, can I just do a quick mental health corner?
Yeah.
Hit it.
I wish you would. And also, this is probably not for the show, but you and I had a nice visit not too long ago where I reached out to you because I knew that you were. We had a call.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That was
and
very
like it was
meaningful.
Really something to get to chat with you. But I wish you would share that with your listeners.
So I was recently diagnosed with PTSD, which is the DSM version of what I actually have, which is complex PTSD, which is PTSD that stems not from a single event, but from repeated trauma. And
wasn't yours especially localized to religion? Wasn't there?
Yeah,
isn't there like a name?
It's very much what is known as religious trauma syndrome, and that's also not a DSM term, which we talked about last week. But they are recognized kind of maladies, if you will. And when you talk about shame, the only people I can blame directly for that kind of repeated trauma are my parents. But I also have to recognize that especially my mom came from a deep South long line of like Baptist.
They were probably
Christians.
both doing their best every day, and that's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I have,
we always assume that we're good at stuff and everybody else sucks or isn't as smart or isn't as careful or isn't as pious. But like, this is something again that I wrote in this thing that I'm working on, which is like every day, everybody's doing this is so annoying to people to say this, but every day everybody's doing their best. And that's the problem.
And that's
like
the problem.
when you say, oh, do better. Well, like, I'm like, why don't you just be taller?
Fuck off.
Well, it was what it was, to paraphrase the cliche, which is like, if you could have done better that day, don't you think you would have?
Yeah.
Most people.
And that being a parent is a lot. I mean, like, not just me, but like everybody is like, oh man, I wish I could redo that. I wish I could retake that. I wish I could have avoided saying, like, again, I don't want to trigger anybody, but like stuff like, why didn't you finish your dinner? Which seems like such an innocuous. We're from a family. We worry about people in China who are starving or whatever. And like, yeah, but you also might be giving your kid a little bit of an eating disorder because of how often you point out that you don't realize this. Because you can't realize this. You don't realize how often you're telling your daughter you think she doesn't know how to eat and how to be healthy. And you mean it in the best possible way. You're doing the best you can every day. But again, you're trying to impress your dead mother when you do that. And you just don't know it. It's my opinion anyway.
You're trying to stay in the tribe.
My mother once told me, and I talked to her about this. She doesn't remember it, but I was home from college and I was talking about, I was after college. I had been recently diagnosed as bipolar. And she said to me that she was sorry. And I'm going to paraphrase because this isn't how she said it. But what I heard was, I'm sorry I had you. I'm sorry I birthed you and passed on all of these defects that run in my family. Like her mother had clinical depression. Her brother was bipolar. Like there's undiagnosed ADHD, and she felt like she was responsible for where I was at. And her response to that was to apologize for bringing me into this world. And holy shit, that is like I honestly, the only thing I could feel was sympathy for her. The fact that she felt responsible.
I don't think
for
she
who I
meant it
was.
as "I'm sorry you." I mean,
Yeah, no,
it was like,
exactly.
it's become very au courant to go, "Oh,
She
how
would-
can anybody have kids today in this world with the
Yeah.
environment?"
Yeah,
blah blah
no,
blah.
she-
But once you've had a kid, you never say, "Oh boy, I really wish I hadn't had this kid. I really want to help the environment."
Yeah,
That's just
no,
not
and
how
that's
it
not what she
works.
meant. That's
No,
just
not
what
at
I
all.
heard, and that's not the
Yeah,
way
yeah,
she said it. She said it in a very like kind of apologetic, loving way. Like, I'm sorry, I'm responsible.
I'm sorry I brought you into
I'm
this.
sorry I passed all of this on to you.
Yeah.
Which is its own form of.
Complicated.
Well, honestly, I think I got my ADHD from my dad's side, and I've learned that both ADHD and bipolar are symptoms of complex PTSD. So maybe
I wish people
maybe
could
I
hear
didn't
every
get it from either
conversation
of
we've
them.
had for 15 years. I can't even tell you, like, let's just one word, lamictal. I can't tell you how many
Yeah.
people I know who got whatever, they started out however they are. Nobody would help them because they thought they were weird and they had a brain problem. And that's the whole thing when you go to a doctor. Like, oh, no, I'd rather just treat your strain from pickleball. I don't want to deal with your brain. That's like for a different, that kind of
pickleball.
Fucking pickleball. You wearing the wrong pickleball shoes. I just learned about pickleball shoes, which to me is like a video game chair. I just don't understand it.
Yeah,
But like,
yeah.
but you go like, everybody's trying to help. Everybody's trying to be decent, but also everybody is unintentionally walking around. And I'm not going to get into a political thing that causes problems here, but just insert once this idea that what if you looked at people, and I'm not saying this means you have to like people. I'm not saying this, but like the first step toward a lot of things is understanding, and understanding something on its terms rather than yours. And if all we ever do is choose to see our world through our own terms, maybe the secondary thing that sucks is the world won't get better, but a primary thing that sucks is you won't get better because you are so cleft to these parameters, these, ice cube, paper thin walls of like, that have like formed who you are. And I think there's a way to handle that in a way that's muscular and assertive, and is not just merely about going, I'm mad at the world and want to do primal scream therapy. Not saying you shouldn't, but it's really
Or
complicated.
drugs.
But like, I can't tell you how many friends I have now, I've learned have taken Lamictal, and like first they were just another screwed up person, and then oh my God, you have depression. Okay, cool, thanks. As my shrink told me the first month that I was with him, like there's so many problems with people, depression being the thing that they've identified in the client, and then not realizing that it is actually a bipolar, and maybe not even the bipolar that you thought. And guess what? We've talked about this, Brett. If you treat somebody for chronic depression, MDD, like any of the depressions, there's a pretty good chance that the thing you're using to treat them will actually harm them because the depression is just one aspect.
Right.
I mean, if you keep putting gas in your glove box, your car's not going to go. And if that's somebody whose job it is to put gas in the glove box, which sounds like a line from a Steely Dan song, but if that's that person's job, they're going to be very, is there gas in the glove box? Like they're going to be very resistant to going, well, I don't understand. Why would you want gas in the tank? That seems like a fire hazard. I don't know. It sounds silly, but like
No, I know what you mean.
But then on top of it all, I have two friends that I co-host podcasts with who started out that way. We've gone through the first two. Third one, oh, guess what? You've actually got, I don't know how we phrase this, but bipolar, a diagnosis of being bipolar. And then in each instance, both of them got a subsequent diagnosis of, say it with me, Brett.
ADHD.
And guess what? That makes all of those preceding things so much more complicated.
Oh my God. Yes. That is the tightrope I walk, is how do I treat my ADHD without triggering manic episodes? And like dealing, like when I'm in a depressive state, ADHD meds don't do anything for me. When I am depressed, I can take all the stimulants I want. It's not going to fix it.
Can I just guess that? And if you get too much of the ADHD when you're not depressed, when you're the other, well, do we say manic? When you ride on the trains in Chicago a lot all weekend, for example, a friend of mine. But like when you're having an episode, if you were to pop an Adderall or a Vyvanse or like a whatever, that might even further escalate
Yeah. So
Yeah.
one of the things for a long, and I know that you have been on Falkland before as well. When I switched back to Vyvanse after a long time, the driving force was I would get manic, and I would love my Falkland. Like my Falkland would extend my manic episodes to a point where it was problematic, and I was basically using the
You ever seen somebody do
Falkland.
cocaine in a movie? In a
Yeah.
movie, when somebody does cocaine, they don't do a little bit of cocaine and then stop.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, and certainly you could say to that person in a very
No,
lucid way, "Hey, Al Pacino in Scarface, I think you've had enough cocaine for now. Like you've got the cocaine you need to do your
Yeah.
work, and now
No,
maybe don't have
I've
all
had a
of the
cocaine
cocaine."
problem. I know how
You know
it
what
goes.
makes you want to do cocaine? In part, is cocaine. And
For sure.
and like I know the way I've described this in a way that I imagine is controversial to some people is that like I got off Adderall because it was long story, but like there's never been anything that made me feel more like myself than Adderall.
Mhm.
22 minutes from I wake up to I'm writing, and like let me get my hands around life in a way. It ended up that the side effects or the results of being on Adderall were not always good, but like I feel like you have to be so careful, because if you're looking at your life in terms of integrity, by which I don't mean brand, but in terms of wholeness in a more like kind of Buddhist way, if you look at your life as having like a contiguous series of events and thoughts that represents you, it's the triple dip cream dream to find whatever it is that helps you be who you want to be, to become who you want to become, or a similar thing. It's like to feel like how I want to feel. Now, those all are very related, but you have somebody who's doing just a butt ton of cocaine going, it helps me be who I want to be. To quote the now discredited Bill Cosby, a great bit. No, I grew up on Bill Cosby. I'm not going to.
Oh man, why is there air? Why is there air? I played that record. I mean, as much as anything.
Oh, for me, it was my brother Russell, whom I slept with, and but there's one where he's talking. There's one in Bill Cosby himself, the special, where he's talking about drugs and talking about people who do cocaine, and people say, "Hey, you got to do the cocaine because it makes you, more of however you are." And you blip this. I said, "Well, what if you're an asshole?" And like some of us are an asshole, and the cocaine's not making it better. But is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah,
Where like
well,
at
honestly,
that moment, I have again a dear friend of mine that I think has been on the show, like has to be circumspect about reloading the pistol with the stuff that seems like the right thing.
I've had a cocaine addiction. Like I've been through that. I know exactly what you mean when you say cocaine makes you want cocaine. It's a self-perpetuating cycle. And no, like I got clean. I haven't done hard drugs for like 20 years. But Focalin is the closest I've ever gotten to doing cocaine again. It brought that frontal lobe kind of pleasure and feeling.
It really does feel like something is lighting up.
Yeah,
something that was dim before is now lighting up.
So what's been happening for the last week, I think even before, I think I mentioned this last time we recorded, is I thought I might have switched to type 1 bipolar because I was just having day after day of being productive, but I was sleeping. And like I've been sleeping 8 hours a night. I've been sleeping 9 hours a night and then having these productive days. And what I've realized is this is maybe what normal people have. This level of energy I've always seen in other people who just have this constant drive.
How are you still having, I say to my wife sometimes, like, how are you still having meetings at 3:00? You've had so many meetings today. And like her place where she works, I don't know why they do lots of meetings on Fridays, and I'm always like, that's crazy for a variety of reasons.
Totally.
My company doesn't do meetings on Friday.
But like people, but like seriously though, like people, isn't that an example though, or people who are still like, I'm like, how are you? Is it just coffee? I know you people love your coffee drinks, but like, how are you still so conscious, let alone animated at like 3 or 4 o'clock? I have a big precipitous drop after like 2 p.m. If I'm being
I am fortunate to work in a company that A, just doesn't do meetings on Mondays and Fridays, and B, it's an international team. So we have to find times that work for everybody. And even like US based people, most of our team is in California. So the earliest meeting for me will be 10 a.m. which,
Like today.
you know, it works. It works great.
Today,
I love it.
10 a.m. That's what, isn't that
10
ironic
a.m.
or
for
funny?
you.
Sweet
It's
But that was my
it's noon
suggestion was
for
10
me.
a.m. my time. Yeah, no, right. Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I will cede my mental health corner to whoever wants to go next.
Do you want to go, Christine? Mine actually might lead nicely into our custom GPT conversation.
No, sure thing. I no real updates on my end. I'm still waiting to hear back on. I have to get additional blood work to figure out some of the health stuff. So no update on that. If anybody was curious, it is what it is. My ADHD I've been struggling with that, and it's funny hearing you talk about like the magic and powers of cocaine, and like getting kind of that thing from Adderall and whatnot. God, I wish cocaine had any impact on me. It does not. Like
I tried it. I tried it exactly once. I tried cocaine, and I grew up in the '80s at a time when everybody was doing cocaine. I had friends who, I was like, "You done cocaine? I mean, you might as well say that you I don't know, did hand stuff on Mount Everest. That's crazy to me." I tried it exactly once. It had no effect, and I could not be more grateful.
Yeah,
ephedrine. I used to eat ephedrine.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
10, 20, no problem.
I've been on Dexedrine, which is like a more an even more pure Adderall.
Dexedrine. That's old school.
It's very old school.
Isn't that Mother's Little Helper?
I mean,
basically from the Stones song.
Yes,
like Dexedrine is for weight loss.
Yes.
Yeah,
that is the subject of Mother's Little Helper.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically it's like almost pure amphetamine salt, and so it's legal speed, and I've been on some amount of that since I was 15 or 16 years old. So like the majority of my life at this point. And so cocaine has no impact on me. But at the same time, my ADHD, which is the reason I've been on the Dexedrine for so long, I am struggling with it. And then for me, a lot of times when my ADHD is bad, that will lead to go back to what you were talking about with shame earlier. That will trigger like anxiety spirals and like kind of like a panic attack stuff, which then just makes me more panicked and more, like shut down, which leads to more feelings of shame and disappointment and whatnot, which leads to more. So it's kind of a perpetuating cycle. So
it's ironic that that's called a positive feedback loop, because it certainly doesn't feel very
is negative, right?
But it's like if you're ever a little kid who's swished back and forth in the bathtub, you can find that you can either work against the wave or with the wave. But if you work with the wave, mom is going to be mad, and that's kind of what you're describing, right? Is you going like, oh, well, this is good. This feels less bad. And then like it's so hard to manage.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, none of it feels good. It's just that but then it feels bad, and then you feel bad about feeling bad, and then it gets worse. Yeah. Regardless, anyway, I've been struggling with my ADHD this week. I don't really know a solution for that other than I got to talk to my psychiatrist, I guess, potentially about another med solution. The problem is I'm already on so much Dexedrine right now. Taking more is not going to help. So I don't know if there's something else.
So it's an instance of like, it's not that there's no, I'm paraphrasing or guessing here, but it sounds like you're saying it's not that it doesn't have any effect on you. It's just that the effect that it's having is not, I mean, there's a thing a lot of folks I think don't know, which is, why do you take speed? And it's like, well, you take speed because, as it turns out, the thing that amphetamines do is what helps you produce dopamine in a more wholesome way. The speedy part, the like, let's go disco dance part, is technically kind of a side effect. And whether it's mushrooms or this, there are a lot of people, or a handful of people, who are starting to ask like, well, is it the chemical change or is it the experience? And in your case, the experience of the like, I've had a lot of that. You might get that, but you're not getting the salutary effects that it's on label for.
Right. And
it's not helping your ADHD.
It's not helping my ADHD. Mm-hmm. And to be completely honest, I don't get the I'm on speed thing. Like, honestly, it's one of those things, like I will feel my heart rate increase and I will know that, like when it's kicked in, but it's not as
22 minutes for me.
Yeah. But it's not as if it will have like an impact on my behavior. You know what I mean?
I
other
do.
than maybe
I
like have
do.
an elevated heart rate. It's not like I feel a high of any sort.
You're getting what a lot of people regard as a desire or some element. Like it's just that, like, it's funny. One of the things that got me off Adderall was this realization. Several things, God, I would love to be back on Adderall. I would kill to be on Adderall right now. But like, what part of what got me with that was just this idea of like, well, I mean, and this is as a thought experiment. Like we've all been on drugs at one point in our life where the side effects were just overwhelmingly bad
Yes.
and negative. Well, for
Last
me,
6 months of
the
my
side
life. Yeah.
effects are awesome. And then the question becomes, like, would I seek this treatment and would I adhere to it as diligently if the side effects weren't ones that I like?
Or even if they were neutral.
Right. It's certainly,
Yeah.
I mean, I looked forward to getting up in the morning and having an Adderall. No shame there. Like, that's just a fact.
Yeah.
Because, and then like people say, oh, well, you're abusing it. But like, no, well, like
No.
if you're like a salesman who's very charismatic, are you abusing your charisma? Like people who have the wiring for this stuff to not be a big deal. There's a reason Starbucks is on every corner. People love that
Right.
damn coffee. People's all gacked out on all these different things. Anyway, now I sound defensive, but that sucks.
No, but
Weak.
totally. I mean, but I will say for me, and I totally get that. I don't get that though. It's one of those things where like, yeah, my heart rate will increase, and I might speak even more quickly, but I'm not getting like, I guess, like the positive dopamine response.
You don't feel like super engaged, like pedals down. You don't get that feeling of like super engagement.
I used to. I haven't in a long time, and so I
Can I
do
have
get it a
them?
little bit more.
Could I have
mean,
all of them, please?
Oh, totally. I will give them all to you. But
I
mean,
promise to be responsible.
which honestly, well, that's the interesting thing, and I have no shame in this. This is when we're just sharing a mental health corner. I can also just share like drug crimes. I very frequently will like have mine with me, and because I get 60 because I take it twice a day. If somebody who is not ADHD and who could actually like benefit, like if we're running like on like a a big project where you've got to work like 20 hours straight and whatnot, I will ask people and be like, do you want to take half of one of these? You're probably going to not want to take the full thing because that's going to totally get you fucked up. But if you want to
especially if you don't have ADHD.
Yeah,
totally.
We pulled an all-nighter at CES once, and I gave someone half of one of my Vyvanse, and it was crazy to see the effect on them. I've never seen him. He was talking like you do normally.
Yes. Totally. And well, imagine me the few times that I have had like that instance when like the dexedrine and the no-dose fused was what I imagine it would be like if cocaine worked on me, because it's genuinely like one of those things out of a movie where the person is talking so fast and is so frenetic and also was so productive. But I don't get that impact. But on this note, I guess that's why I need to talk to my psychiatrist. I think the last time I really kind of felt any of that, and to your point, I don't know if I'm seeking the side effect or what it is. I don't actually care. Like I just want to get back on the thing where I feel like I
don't want to be right. I want to be happy.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
I want you to fix this. Like, fix it. And like, I don't need a persuasive, as Tom Wolfe would say, I don't need a persuasive theory about what my problem is. If you've got some, if you think you can just give me antibiotics and it'll make the infection go away, go for it.
No, 1000%. But I used to be on a drug called Provigil or modafinil, and my husband recently
I'm on it right now. It's what I take every morning.
It's fucking great. But I used to take that and the dexedrine at the same time. And it was fantastic. And the only reason I stopped that dual treatment was because of the price at the time of Provigil, and my insurance company wouldn't cover it. But
I used to buy it on the gray market.
Yeah,
we talked about that.
We talked about that.
I used to buy Amenapital on the black
as ephedrine got outlawed, like in different states, and it's such a bummer like that. And when I'll tell you about Grandpa Merlin. Going to tell you a story. 1987, you could go into the Shell station and get I want to say 25 or 50 ephedrine for like $2.99, $3.99. And then I still have a Google Sheets document tracking the price of it over time. But like it's I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
No. You're good. You're good. But my husband recently started taking provisional modafinil or whatever, and we found out that with GoodRx and our insurance, it's actually covered pretty well. And so I'm going to talk to my psychiatrist and be like, okay, look, you're probably not going to want to have me take as much dexedrine as I take and as much Provigil as I was taking, because that would be way too much. But maybe I could try
both of those for different aspects.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Both of them
was.
at once. That's interesting.
Yeah, I was. It worked real well because I think interestingly, I think with the dextrine helps with me more for it's not even so much the ADHD. I think it does help my anxiety a little bit, which is counter to
Very,
how.
very paradoxical, very difficult to explain to somebody.
Yes, well, but it's even difficult to explain to doctors who are not well versed in it, as I know when I have to tell any
Say it,
general
sister.
practitioner. Any general practitioner who doesn't know me, they're like, "Oh, well, I think that this is your problem. You're on this and this." And I'm
First
like,
thing we
"Yeah,"
need to do is get you off all these drugs and get you smoking.
Mhm.
and
Yeah, I'll
I'm
just
like,
hit pause on my life, and like I
right,
just won't be a person for a while. Well,
which
you go and you and House go and just look at some posters of bodies.
Which I
Exactly.
did 6 months, which was the last 6 months of 2023 for me, and was pretty fucking horrific. Having to go off of one antidepressant, start another. That one didn't work, and then go off of that one.
Oh, you poor thing. That
Like
sucks.
0 stars. Would not recommend. Do not encourage. But my point being, but the Dexedrine does work, and so I've been very I oftentimes don't want to argue with doctors because I've had bad experiences when I do. But one area where I will is when they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, your Dexedrine, that might be a problem." You're like, go fuck yourself. I've been on it since I was 15. I guarantee you that my heart rate and my speech pattern and everything else that you are associating with the speed I'm on would be identical. I mean, the heart rate might be a little bit slower, but only just. And
Well,
I know
'cause
this because I've tested that.
They were worried about your heart rate way before you started Dexedrine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Like,
with general practitioners, it's like, you know what? Just because you read an abstract of a recent study does not make you capable.
well, not only that,
of-
but a lot of times they will be like, "Oh, I think the reason you have anxiety is because of this drug." And I'm like, "No, actually, this has helped with the anxiety. In fact,
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons initially because I was a teenage girl in the 90s. It was rare to get an ADHD diagnosis, and I got one, but the doctor didn't even think that I was ADHD. It's just we were like, we think that this might help with the depression and the anxiety, um, but I can't get you a prescription for this for an off-label purpose. So I will give you an ADHD diagnosis. Now it turned out I am ADHD, but again, the 90s teenage girl, that's not something that you would get diagnosed with.
Girls don't have ADHD. Only
No, I mean
boys are
even now it's
hyperactive.
hard, but well, and thank God.
You don't seem to be a behavioral problem for me yet, so you're a
Yeah,
girl.
yeah,
You can't have
yeah.
ADHD.
Right. Well, and to be honest, it was a weird switch where I went from having no ADHD symptoms to having ADHD symptoms, and it was seemingly almost overnight. And that was
Were
interestingly
you expressing out of curiosity? This is something. Forgive me. I've talked about
no.
so much lately because, but like when I was younger, which is a long time ago, but like when it was just ADD, like in the
Yes.
90s,
Mhm.
the primary thing that I think folks were aware of was the H. At least in what I was aware of, it was the whole like your kid needs to sit down and
Yes.
class. You need to get
Yes.
them on Ritalin, or like you need to go to a special school.
Correct.
And like I think that is the beginning of I don't want to talk broadly, but like there's such a lack of understanding about what is happening, and stuff that seems extremely paradoxical to people is really not that paradoxical. It's not that difficult to understand if you understand that there's these pipes and wires in your brain, and you look at it this one way because your pipes and wires work this way, and then mine work in this other way. It doesn't mean we have like different species brains, but like the very first time this is a 40-second story. My friend Leslie Harpold, R.I.P. My friend, one day she said to me, this is a twice told tale, but it's I think important. I was 43 Folders Day, so circa 2004 or 5. She goes like, "Oh, you got ADHD," and I'm like, I think every doctor says I should just drink water and take walks, and she gave me 2 Adderall, and she said, "Take one of these and see what
Mhm.
happens." Pretty much that was it. Like she's a nut. She was the best. But anyway, the next day I did take one, and I wrote 3 to 5,000 words, and I didn't run around. I did not have the
Right.
H.
Well,
The
that's the
H
thing.
that I have is in my head. The H is
Same.
not in my legs. The H is
Same.
in my head. But, and she said, "Well, then you've absolutely got ADHD," said Dr.
Mhm.
Leslie Harpold, because if you'd taken that and wanted to go out and like, I don't know, dance to DJ Shadow, that would
Right.
mean that like you're normal.
Correct.
The fact that
Yes.
made you
more
like
focused in,
Mhm.
dead
I
on.
had energy, but boy, the
Sure.
focus, that's the thing people miss is
Well,
like,
that's
it's
the
not that I
thing.
can't concentrate. I want to be able to choose what I concentrate on.
Right. You want to be able to actually be able to do what you need to do,
Yes.
and be able to do it in like an orchestrated
Which is
way.
very
No,
paradoxical to people.
it is very
you know?
paradoxical. And
Yeah.
and look, to be clear, I am ADHD. My question, and I've talked about this before, and I don't want to go too long, is there was a switch when I was diagnosed with depression when I was 14, although I diagnosed myself when I was 9, and I probably had symptoms going back as early as 6. But like, so, for me, it is not informed by, like, for a lot of people, things have been informed by traumas and other things in your life. For me, not to say those things haven't later on impacted things, but there was a biochemical thing with my brain that I'm aware of going back to 6 years old. I can recall when, memories and things like that. And I diagnosed myself with depression when I was 9 years old. Because of a TV commercial of all things. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I have all that. That's completely me.
Was it
And
for Burger
again,
King? What was it for? Do you remember?
it was I think it was for a mental health center, actually. And they were like kind of going through like the
Called
symptoms of
something like
depression.
Longview or something.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. It
We
was
have horses. Girls can
chartered.
come here with their
It was-
problems.
Look, everyone wears the same outfit.
Look
Yeah,
at that.
basically,
The
it was
laundry's easy.
it was for a center called Charter Charter Peachford, which I don't even know if that exists anymore. Um, but I was depressed, and then I tried these antidepressants. And again, this was hard because I was 14 and a girl, which was rare. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of adolescent SSRI studies. And then beyond that, my bone age and my body weight were so low that they literally had no data on, like, what does a person who weighs 67 pounds, what does an SSRI do to them, and how do you dose that? Like, they literally didn't know. So I went through a lot of shit with that. But one of the side effects was, after I went on Paxil Prozac, I think it was Paxil, was basically I became classic ADHD, and I'd never
Really?
had that
You didn't get
before.
numb? That's so interesting.
Well, I
Doesn't it make a
did,
lot of
but
people feel numb?
yeah, some of it. Well, I did get numb, actually, but in addition to that, and it could have been a coincidental thing with hormones, brain clusters, whatnot. I have no idea. But then I went from being a very diligent, focused, like studious type A OCD to the max person to not being able to focus on anything, not being able to concentrate, not being able to force myself to study, to, like, every aspect of myself completely switched. And it appeared as, and was, ADHD. And so I got a diagnosis for that. And definitely the dexedrine helped. Years later, I added Provigil to the mix, and that was a great combo, because again, I have some there were some other things that were helpful, like anxiety and depression. The two of them worked well together. I don't know, this might just be me, like, grasping at straws and being like, oh, go back to this thing that worked, 18 years ago, and that you had to give up a
I would
decade
search for my
ago.
keys here because the light's good.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
cool.
right, like go back to this thing that worked, that you had to go off of for, medical billing reasons, and not anything else. Let's see if that will fix things. And I don't know if it will or won't, but I do need to. And he might even say at this point, he's like, when I prescribed you to do both of those at the same time back then, that was fine, but now there's no way that, the
If
world
it's
will
any
allow that.
consolation, at least in my experience, in the time that I've sought help for this from somebody who's actually willing to help me, and those are both important. I mean, things kind of have, in terms of like a little bit of the understanding's gotten better, and some of the drugs have gotten better. It just feels like they're still not good, but like
Oh,
the
yeah.
tools have gotten a little less blunt.
Oh no, that's true for sure. And I'm lucky at seeing the same psychiatrist that I saw who prescribed me those things to begin with. So I don't
I'm
know.
sorry you're having a bad week. That sucks.
So yeah, so I need to find out, like, I need to talk to him about getting my ADHD back in control. And that was too long. Anyway, I'm done.
Oh.
I had to go off Vyvanse because I have high blood pressure. I'm ready to throw to you, Jeff. I just want to say that I would be back. Vyvanse, it's nothing was ever as good as the one before in terms of effects.
Right.
I mean, Adderall's a pretty high bar. And I thought, like, Focalin, for the first one they tried was, I think, Ritalin. And because as much as he is a libertarian nut, like, we did start off and ramp up, especially with Lamictal. Ramp up, ramp down, buddy. But like trying just little bits, and then you'd have like what seems like an effective dose. And we tried different things, and he's I love the fact that he's open to trying different things, but like, honestly, Vyvanse was not as good as,
Focalin.
Focalin was not as good as
As
Adderall. And the
Adderall.
whole reason I'm on modafinil is like, he feels like it's not in the sweet spot, but it's in the less sour spot title.
Right.
The less
Well,
sour
and-
spot for like, you will get some of the effects you need out of this without
Right.
increasing your heart rate,
Well, I was gonna say-
or blood pressure, which I have to
I was going to say
watch.
that's why my husband was taken off of his. He'd been on Vyvanse or Dexedrine or whatever, and Dexedrine, Vyvanse, for people who don't know, actually is Dexedrine with a couple of molecules difference, and then
Same
which
as
they changed.
Adderall.
I didn't know that.
too.
Yeah,
So you can't snort it.
Well, that was
Truly,
I was gonna say
it's-
no. I know.
yeah.
The main change they made is so you couldn't snort it, but you can still abuse it. You put it in water, it's fine. But the bigger thing, honestly, the snorting thing was the cover for the real reason they changed it. It was to extend the patent life.
Oh yeah, classic. Like all those allergy medicines that.
Well,
yeah.
and speaking of like
get a different
modafinil,
mechanism. Yeah.
There's a very similar drug from Provigil called Nuvigil. It is not as effective. It is not as good. I've had negative experiences with it.
Amenafidil, as it's known,
Right.
generically.
That's
yes.
funny.
Yeah, but it's called Nuvigil, and again, that was done because the patent on Provigil was coming up, and they were like, "Oh shit, we got to extend this because this modafinil is incredibly expensive, even off prescription. It's incredibly expensive, but
Still.
yeah,
Huh.
Amenafidil is so much easier to find on the black market than actual Menafidil. Like Amenafidil, you can buy black market just about anywhere.
For some reason, it
and-
sounds like somebody who runs a militia to me.
I mean,
Eamon. God, you
Totally.
hear what they did to Eamon? What they did
Totally.
to Eamon Daffodil?
Eamon is not his father.
Don't call me Mr. Daffodil. Call me Eamon.
yeah, but anyway, but we'll see. I don't know. I need to find something else, but that's but to your point,
like, one thing a lot of this comes back to is like a thing I people always talk about, I hope my kid gets into a good school. And I'm like, well, I hope my kid gets the good teacher. Like, because if you
Yes.
go to the good school and don't get the good teacher, it's no bargain.
Oh, that was my first high school, which was
Yeah.
incidentally when my brain switched and I went from being
Oh,
like
there you
type A
go.
went on. Oh,
But
and
finding the right doctor really makes a difference.
Yeah, no,
And
but-
not just
but-
somebody who like kiss your ass, but like somebody who is curious and sympathetic
Oh,
in a way
agreed.
that a lot of GPs aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and no, but my high school was awful. Like my teenagehood, part of what sucked so badly was that I went to this great school that had fucking terrible teachers, and it turned out it wasn't really that great of a school because it was so high achieving. All the kids were competitive and in a way that was toxic, and the parents were competitive and toxic, and the teachers were competitive
Once it
and toxic.
becomes known as a good school, the end is already beginning because now it's become the place where sweaty parents want their kids to go.
Well, it was just,
Exactly.
and it was, and everybody was miserable. And then the teachers were completely ununderstanding. Again, late 90s mental health stuff. They're not going to be there for that. Now I would absolutely sue them for how they treated me and what they did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, without a doubt. Oh,
Oh my
100%.
gosh.
And then I also was trying to find the right psychiatrist, which I think I went through 6 or 7 to find somebody. Again, hard to find treatment, especially late 90s when you're a teenage girl for certain things because they're not taking mental health seriously.
Talk to anybody today about trying to find a therapist.
I mean, it's awful. It's
not just
terrible.
COVID. My wife works at UC, which is a medical school, UC San Francisco. And like, there's just been this diaspora of doctors in general. There's all this stuff
Yeah.
you've heard about. A lot of doctors are retiring. A lot of everybody's retiring. But also, as you've probably heard, fewer people are becoming internist GPs, or a
Mhm.
term I hate and just learned last month is a hospitalist. Like, fewer
man.
people are doing that because it's not just where the money is, but it's partly where the money is to be a specialist.
Yes.
And like, it's just not attracting the same amount of like very engaged people who want to be a family physician like my mother before me, kind of thing.
Right. No, everybody wants to be a dermatologist, or something.
Right.
When they want to make the money, which get it, but it weakens the pool. Yeah. When my psychiatrist,
Christina, how can I make your problem about your skin? Did you know the skin's the largest organ? Instead of that Dexedrine, let's try this soothing cream I recommend.
Anyway.
When you put your makeup on, use a less strong finger.
Oh,
Did you know that? Like, don't rub it. Don't rub it. Use a less strong finger and always go up. Here we go.
always go up.
All right, most of you probably know how much I love Notion, who are the sponsor of today's episode. I use it all the time. It's something that I use for notes, for keeping track of documents, for keeping track of the discounts that I have at various places. But now it has the power of AI that's built right inside, and Notion can work across your entire workspace. And for me, it's been really great because when we think about wanting to like build our own LLMs, one of the cool things about that is that the Notion AI isn't just like asking basic questions about something that's actually able to ask questions around things that you have yourself. So if I want to get information about the different show notes that we have across all Overtired episodes, I can import those into Notion and then ask questions about that, which is very, very cool. And so Notion combines your docs, your notes, and projects into one space that is simple and beautifully designed. And the fully integrated Notion AI helps you work faster, write better, think bigger, doing tasks that normally might take you hours in just seconds. Like I said, if I bring in all of the show notes from the last however many 100 episodes of Overtired, I can ask a question and be like, what was the thing that we talked about in episode 67? And it can let me know, which is really useful because sometimes we've recorded so many of these episodes over so many years and such a sporadic like schedule. I don't remember what we did in episode 67, but Notion AI can help me out. So try Notion AI for free when you go to notion.com/overtired. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/overtired to try the powerful, easy to use Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/overtired.
Hey, Jeff, how's your corner?
Yeah, we've
I
done
feel
it
like we
again.
could-
We've gone an hour.
I feel like we could leverage the fuck out of these discussions with SEO.
Yes.
At this
Oh
point.
my
And I
God.
do feel like we're leaving sponsor money on the table.
Best Christina depression, sexy Christina depression.
I mean, look, we can get the drug companies. Honestly, if you want to sponsor us, like I'll read your ad read. I'm not going to actually tell people
Oh,
to
me
take your drug,
too.
but I will
I
fucking
feel like-
make
Well,
your
I won't
money
use your
and read
VPN, but I will talk about your opioid.
The most
Absolutely.
uncontroversial drug we talk about is Lamictal, and I feel like it
Yeah.
comes up with
Well,
guests.
that's the
with
least
us, like-
controversial.
That's the least
So,
controversial
like,
one.
Box
that's where we
warning?
start. That's where we start, right? The least controversial. I am in a situation. I have well, first of all, I don't know if people can hear dishes, but friend of the show, my youngest teenager is emptying the dishwasher.
How old
To
is your
me,
youngest
that's
teenager?
like he's 15, and the
Oh, I have a
oldest
teenager
is
who's
turning
16.
18 soon.
Oh,
Oh man, it's
okay.
a lovely.
Right.
They're all good ages in a way, I think,
Mm.
but I love that age.
Mm.
But unloading the dishwasher, I'm never going to stop
Stupid
that. It's
baby
music to my
babies.
ears.
Stupid babies, so stupid.
Stupid babies, assholes, monsters, everything.
Asshole babies.
So I have my oldest is going to be leaving for college. He's a senior now, and he my birthday was last week, and he in the card he said, "I can't believe that soon I'm not going to be seeing you every day."
Aww.
And I was like,
Killed you.
and I've already the struggle for me since the summer, because when your kid's leaving, all of a sudden you start noticing the things it's the last time, and I've been really struggling and mostly succeeding all year. And like, don't grieve now, right? Like feel it, like feel feelings and be glad that you have this time.
It's totally
now.
sensible, but it's much more challenging and for me, more emotionally. It sounds nobody cares about parent stuff, whatever. But like, I actually like this person. And
Yeah,
like, if I didn't like
exactly.
this person, it might be easier. And I'd be like, oh, finally I can
Yeah,
go to
get
Europe.
out. I do not
But
relate
like,
to
I
like get him out.
treasure.
No,
There's a reason
Jeff,
I was almost
you've
late.
said that exact thing before.
He's
on
like
our
a
show,
great
Jeff.
roommate and a
Yeah.
friend. Yeah,
Like,
it's great.
You really
It's great.
love your kids and have this great relationship. And
I
I
was
know
almost
that's been
late
hard for
today
you.
because I wanted to watch House with my son.
I love that.
Amazing.
I love that.
My parents
Yeah.
were honestly glad to get rid of me, and I was glad to.
Then
leave
you should
them.
be too. Brett.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
happy.
Fine.
I was ready to leave, but now it's one of those things where like my mom gets very, very upset like whenever I leave, like it's one of those things. But at the time I was like,
Well, I think I'll bet
I'm
you
done.
like Jeff and me and a lot of other people, like every Christmas morning, I think, is this the last one?
yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
maybe because
Yeah.
I'm dead, but also just because of, who knows what comes along. Be careful crossing the street and that kind of
Right.
stuff. Even if you're not an obsessive thinker about that stuff so much, which I think I'm not, like it's still kind of difficult to put it out of your mind. But I think
It's
you're on
not
the right track, Jeff.
catastrophizing to have those moments, right?
I think it's not.
yeah,
But you're also
yeah.
on the right track though with I think the like, let's I don't know. This is getting into way deeper stuff. You guys should have me on every week. But like, I'm sure your listeners would love that. But
I'm
like,
sure they
it
would
is
actually.
also about being in that moment and like
That's exactly it. You're not in the moment.
watching
That's
that
been the thing.
particular show without having to feel
Absolutely.
like this negative feeling I have is something that will be with me for the rest. It's like it's okay. Bittersweet is an adjective for a reason.
Yeah,
It's
melancholy
okay.
is usually actually a beautiful thing. So what
Mhm.
I've been doing with this is I've resurrected. Years ago I made a timeline in Airtable, which I love. I go between text file CSVs and Airtable all the time.
Yeah.
And what I wanted, because I had a very sort of like meandering, chaotic youth, like where I had moved like 36 times, and my mom and I were just, I don't know if she was in witness protection to this day. I wonder that. We're just like moving around all over the place. And I went to like 3 elementary schools, and like everything just felt, it's hard to hold, right? And so I was like, you know what I want? I want a timeline, and on that timeline, I want a few different things. I want every address I ever lived in and who I lived with there. Like, was it my mom's sister? Was it a boyfriend? Like, whatever,
If
right?
you ever throw your kid out, I'm moving in with you because I have done this.
Well, yeah, and like what I think is beautiful about it, part why it's helpful to me now. So when I made it, actually, it was very calming. It was like a little warm hug, because it was like, oh, look, I'm not looking to see a straight line through my life, but I see the path and the winding in a way that
When you see the
isn't
patterns, you can see
knocking
it's like
around in my
opening
head.
something in an audio
You
app
see
and
the
going, oh,
patterns.
this happened for a long time, this happened for a little time.
Right.
Well, of course, wasn't that obvious? No, but then also you go like, well, to me, that feels as fresh as yesterday. Weirdly,
Yeah.
the super old ones, like my grandmother with Alzheimer's would remember stuff from 1917, but not
Yeah.
what just happened. But like,
Yeah.
it's also that like the
brain
sequence
spot.
of those events, and then like, oh, I lived in that place. That place must have had a big impact on me because I lived there a lot less
Yes.
time than I thought. Oh, and wasn't there a girl across the street named Melissa?
That's
I'm
the
suddenly
piece of it
remembering.
too, right? It's like, wow, this is taking up this
It
much
gives you
space in my
permission to
head.
remember your life.
It took up, yeah, exactly. And the thing that's helpful about it now, there's two things about it that I'm noticing now. One is, the thing that's helpful now is that it reminds me of how much transition has been in my life, and how much lots of that transition has led to really just beautiful things and who I am, even if it wasn't good, and how like necessary it is in our lives. I know that for him, like I'm excited for him. I know what it means. Just like get out, start your life. Right. But I need to find, I'm loving finding ways to just put this on the timeline and realize that, like, should everyone survive, which you never know. Right. Like, but I'm not really that hung up on that. Like, that timeline's just going to get longer, and there's going to be really cool shit in it.
That's extra incentive, though, to remember that this is all you have.
Right.
Like a thing I like to say to my friend Alex is, however anybody in the world feels about me, I'm all I've got. I'm very disinclined to change who I am because somebody else doesn't like it. Not because I'm obdurate, but because like, well, there's no bottom to that. But like, it also means like learning to become. Mindfulness is such an overused word, and it's become synonymous with piles of rocks and meditating while a bell plays and all that kind of stuff. But mindfulness to me is less about, quote, being Zen, and much more about just catching yourself or finding yourself in situations and going, well, then how do I feel about how I feel? And that's such an important part of integration. It sounds like therapy, but like it's such an important part. And like, it's okay to be sad about it, or it's okay to be, it's okay to be all of those things. And like, feelings are like roaches. You can only chase them out of the room for a little while. And
Oh,
like,
man.
why not own that?
Yeah. And you just made me think of something that kind of changed how I think about feelings and where they can exist. So I spent 2 days with a forensic anthropologist years ago to do a profile. I was a journalist for like 20 years and then left because I hate how journalism is done overall. But I spent 2 days with this guy, and basically he pioneered how you exhume mass graves in places that had dictatorships, whatever. And he has this picture that he showed me that was like, he was part of a team that was exhuming a mass grave in Guatemala, and around the rim of the hole are the relatives, and there's children there and everything else, right? And they've been sitting there for a while because they're just waiting to see who comes up, basically, right? And but if you look at this picture, some of them are talking and laughing. There's a kid eating an ice cream cone. Like, there's all this different stuff, and I was like, what is that? What am I looking at? And he said, here's the incredible thing about doing this work, is that it's the only context in which I feel like I've experienced every human emotion being available. Because it's just like, you go to the very worst, and then people are naturally going to get to a point where they're like, I want to fuck an ice cream cone, or like, remember this story, I'm laughing, right? Like, I think that's really, it's an intense way to kind
like
of
on the emotional palette, this is really a lame analogy, but like we don't get to we don't get to pick what our own emotional palette is unless we
Yes.
are a little bit deranged. But like something I feel like I want to say this in a kind way that's useful, but like you also can't choose other people's emotional palette. You can't tell them
Mhm.
how to feel. You can't tell them what's appropriate. And for the love of God, please stop telling people how to grieve. Stop telling people they're grieving wrong. Stop telling people they're being depressed wrong. Stop telling somebody who's sad that they're actually happy, because now you're also basically just telling them they're sad and they're a liar. And that's not
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
be,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not helpful. It seems helpful. Let's go back to 45 minutes ago or whatever it was.
Right.
That feels like something your parents say to you. Oh, no, you're pretty. You're really pretty, and if they don't like you, they're not your real friends. And like, well, I'm not pretty, and I know they're not my real friends, and that's the problem. And also, you saying this makes me feel like you think I'm 4.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
exactly, exactly. Well, okay, so then what's the transition to
were the,
what
were
I,
the bodies like recently buried? It sounds like
they had been,
they wouldn't be
no,
like exhuming something from the
probably,
40s.
no, they were probably at the time 10 years old.
Is this in like
Um,
Rwanda or something?
it was in Guatemala, so like the people are looking for clothing they recognized, or that kind of stuff. I mean, it's awful, right? And I don't mean to like hit
No,
that
no, no.
hard.
I watched because I watched plane crash videos.
Oh, he
Speaking of
also
forensic,
pioneered how you actually do body identification in plane crashes. This guy was the we called the
like
thing the
when you
bones
look
don't
at that
lie.
debris field, like it is rough. It isn't just like, oh, here's this pair of baby shoes and stuff like that. It's
Right.
just the anyway. Sorry, it's just I'll make.
Yeah, no. I mean, well, okay, so
How long
here's
ago was that? How long ago
I
you
did
had that
this
experience?
profile in
2000s.
yeah, in the 2000s. That was a whole time where I was either in a war zone or talking to people who are doing the terrible things that
Well, I'm
come
from
out of
Florida, so I can relate.
Yeah, you could see that. So here's what I think is a transition to, I mean, hell, maybe custom GPT becomes the gratitude for like, but so like one of the things in doing that timeline that I find delightful is the shit that all of a sudden you want to put in. Like I want to put in when Jaws 3D played on television and you got 3D glasses in the
Oh my
newspaper.
God,
I
you are
want
in
that
my
in there.
harass,
Right?
Jeff.
Like I want to
Holy
put in
God, you're up
I
my
want to put
alley.
in the actual scope of the Dean Martin roast series, right? Like you just like I want to know where all these things
But could it
that
also be stuff
knock
like
around
this
my
is when
head.
that one Arby's closed, or this is when our neighbor got a different car? And like it
Totally.
seemed to anybody else that sounds nuts, but like
Yep.
me, I was remembering that our next door neighbor in 1976 had a 65 Mustang that I really liked. I think it's one reason I really like, old Mustangs. And like, but there's just all of this like impressionistic stuff. And it, I don't know how to say it. It doesn't sound corny because you can't grok this until you do it. And
Yeah.
I'm right here sitting right now in my chat GPT section where like there's so much stuff where like I unintentionally given myself permission maybe to remember things, but also just to think things that I
Yeah.
didn't know were up there. And you don't have, and therapy's great. Talking to friends is great, all that kind of stuff. But there are paths you can take on your own. Guys, sorry, this is what writing is.
No,
Writing is not
Is
about
what writing
publishing.
is.
Writing
Yeah.
is
no,
about having the temerity to believe that the things that are in your head are worth looking at and thinking
Yeah.
about in a way
and
you can
thinking about
communicate.
and exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, the reason that I am such a proponent of therapy isn't so much from the realizations or the therapy itself, but because that's given me permission to think when I'm not in therapy, to do that sort of introspection, whether it's through journaling
Wow,
or
that's so
through other
wholesome. That is
things.
so wholesome, so weird to other people probably. I hate to sound so touchy about this, but again, Holden Caulfield. But like that is such a gift to give to yourself.
Yeah, but sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to comment on that, but because yeah, I think you're exactly right. Like that's one of those things where it seems like that's what like it's important to be able to have these thoughts and have these memories until you go through the process. I don't think it's cheesy. I think that that's what makes us human, and that's what like makes art.
And it also amazingly, like when you let things tumble out in that way, whether you're writing or it's making a timeline or whatever,
Hmm.
it can make me feel more present. Like I said last year, I hit this point, and I'm mostly there still, where it's like all of a sudden I felt everything that I had lived. I just felt it, but I felt it as I am now, and not as it knocked about in my head. And the thing about making a timeline, like it's almost like the GTD thing of like get everything down, right?
Right.
It's actually wonderful. There are stupid things that, like when the
Especially if I
RVs
could say,
closed.
especially if you go into it saying to yourself, this is not about anything except capture. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
to do anything about any of this. It
Right.
sounds nuts, but
You have to
you'll
do
get that
anything about
reference,
any of this.
which is it's
Yeah.
not my. I need to do a mental sweep, or in this case, maybe an emotional sweep.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like,
Yep.
that's what I'm going to do to get all this down, and I'll make something out of it later. But the more you do a mental sweep about your work, the more you realize you need to do about your work, and the more about
Yes.
your work and more about your life. If you do that about your emotions and your family, you're going to have some really interesting things come up that just have not been top of mind ever.
Yeah. 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 It's wonderful. Okay, so let's talk about. I mean, you've
Let's talk about
talked a little bit
GPTs.
about. Yeah, if you're keeping this kind of data, or if you tend to keep this kind of data, it's just one thing you could plug into a custom GPT. And Merlin, I want you, if you don't mind, I've been building them for my own personal and work reasons, and
Are you
I
using
would
the
love to hear.
OpenAI version of that?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would love to hear you talk about how you use it and how you
Yeah.
think about
So
it. And
your listeners are familiar with what a GPT is. We don't need to explain that, right?
No, I think
Okay.
most people know at this point. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I cut you off, Jeff.
no, that's fine. I mean, mostly I want to, and we have the freedom here to not get into the kind of tedious, uninformed
Oh, bless
ethical
your heart.
issues. And
Thank
there
you
are
so
ethical
much.
issues,
Yeah.
right? But like, we don't have to
We
talk
don't-
about that. Let's
right.
just talk about what we're doing with it, and
I
assume we're
heard
all
OpenAI
adults
kidnapped
here.
a kid once.
Yeah. Just assume we're all adults here, and we're going into it with open eyes.
So my
like we
only
do
little bit of
everything.
prelude on this is to say that I've been pretty interested in this stuff since that whoever that YouTuber is, that English guy who just retired.
Tom
He
Scott.
did a YouTube. Yeah, that'd be him.
Yes.
He did a YouTube probably back year before.
It was last
I
year.
guess not at this point. You're so good. My God, you're encyclopedic.
Yeah,
She
no,
is a
it's
Can I have
she's
all
a
of your
font of
Dexedrine? I'll give you
knowledge.
an address.
she doesn't need a spreadsheet.
It's
And he had talked about just this thing that it just blew my mind, because I've been interested in things like this. I mean, when I had a Quadra 800, I would try to make it work by my talking to it, and of course it didn't really work. And like I've been vaguely interested. I was thinking last night, as I was posting some stuff last night about this, and thinking about how the hours I spent in 1988 like making a moose talk on my Mac through Talking Moose, and like
amazing.
all this stuff where like, sound. This is an app that'll play sounds from David Letterman, and like those kinds of things. And like, wow, I mean, like what a different place we are at now. All I want to say in terms of prelude to this is I'm really glad folks know what that is, and we won't have to explain or be weird about it. But part of my journey with ChatGPT and OpenAI stuff in particular is this constant yearning for more memory, in the sense of like, I wanted to remember more about what I say. I want it
Right.
to remember more about what I tell it, really. And that's been a journey. So like threads got better at that over time, but still you start a new thread, no more memory. Then it got custom instructions, which has been mostly real good. And then when GPTs came along, of course, for somebody like me, this was practically made for how my brain works. Unfortunately, it's like so difficult to explain to people why I have a Google spreadsheet that covers the heights of celebrities.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I know that Elizabeth Debicki is 6'3"? Because it's in the doc.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one example. A second example, and these are trivial, but I think useful to know. I came into this with my brain wired for, oh man, could I do something with this? And like you think about the things where, like, think about what like life was like before Google. And then people, and then Google came along, and it was real good for a real long time. I read Paul's Google Hacks book. Like I know about Booleans, and I still use, or in all caps.
Yeah.
It's increasingly less useful. But the point is, you remember what it was like when you first went, oh, this is a blank page, you type it, it finds it.
Oh.
And that seemed like, for somebody who was even on the very good Alta Vista at the time, that was from another universe. All right. And I could instantly see the possibilities of having my own GPT. So one would be like a jokey stuff. It's a joke amongst my friends that I've got all these spreadsheets, right? And 'cause it's true. Like every flashlight I've ever bought, I can tell you how many lumens, what it costs per lumen, and what kind of battery it has. I can tell you all my 3D filaments. I can tell you what the density is, what the color is, how much it costs, all that kind of stuff. Celebrities, right? That's another celebrity playlist. One I made a few years ago that I sent to my pal John Roderick was, I made this thing called, I made this spreadsheet where I said, here's the people, like a bunch of important people in my family, including the people who live in my house, my beloved, late mother-in-law, father-in-law, all those things. And for each one of those, I did the most basic thing, which is I just entered in the day that they were born. And then using just a few easy formulas, I was able to just quickly calculate, like, oh, this many days and blah, blah, blah. Then I made like a manual version of a pivot table where I said, how old I was able to finally say stuff like, how old was Grandma Steinus on this day? What and
That's so
so
cool.
on and so forth. And I'm just gonna is it okay to send something in this chat? Is that gonna be
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
like here's an example of like that in action. So this is where I have gone in. So in that instance, I took those spreadsheets, turned it into a CSV, and I think I am doing this poorly. I don't know how to add an image. I took the CSV. Do I just drag it in here? How do I get in this window? Can I
I've
copy and
never put
paste?
anything in there.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
we've never added an image.
We've
to
never
the
added an
chat.
image.
Okay, sorry. That's not going to be as fun. But like I entered all that in and then I put it into a GPT, a new GPT, and I explained what it is that I want to do. And so, but I'm able to do things like say, and so Grandma Steinus, that's my beloved mother-in-law, my son's grandmother, and I can say things like, "What was a popular song on the charts the year that Billy turned 5?"
That's so cool.
That's
Why
great.
would you want that? Well, I find out that somebody that I used to know by Gotcha was, well, I don't know how you say it, was popular then, featuring Kimbra, whatever that is.
Yes.
Ooh.
What was a popular song the year my late mother-in-law turned 30? Mac the Knife by Bobby Darin.
Wow.
On what date was my late mother-in-law the same age that my kid is now? December 14th, 1945. Okay. If that's not interesting to you, that's okay.
I
But
love
I
that.
hope somebody out there will understand how interesting and like like sort of like we were talking about, Jeff. Like now that's opening me up to this whole new world of stuff I could be doing with this, including that timeline thing. The app I've wanted since the 1990s is an app that lets me, because this thing I'm obsessed with, which is how many years it's been since this thing is the same amount of years since that thing.
Yes.
We're
Oh my
able to-
God, I do that calculation all the time.
yeah, like the time since
Mind
synchronicity.
bending.
The time since synchronicity is like the time since like the first Duke Ellington record to then.
Yes.
Like I wish there was just an easy way to do that. That is in my grasp now. I'm not sure that would be incredibly useful, but guess what? I learn a lot from doing this, and I can apply it to other things. So my interest in this started with just extending the weird stuff where I could use. I feel like I would benefit from technology. And again, I know we're not talking about scare stuff, but so far we're not talking anything about nuclear missiles being launched.
Nope.
We're not talking about weird decision making. We're not talking about plagiarism. And despite the people who love to yell at me on Mastodon about how it doesn't really understand math, it's just saying
God.
words. And it's like, yeah,
Yes,
but like the
we
rest of
get
the
it.
internet doesn't understand anything either. And I keep
Exactly.
using that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, especially when it comes to, I think I said this on Mastodon a few weeks ago, was like, if you have the $20 boy account on this and you're not using this to make constant, low stakes, trivial, fun things, the serious point is you're kind of missing out on something that's probably going to be good for you to know in general, especially in the future. But also you're just missing out on a lot of fun, because if it gets that date of when Mac the Knife came out, like it's going to be okay. Right? It's going to be, but like the thing is, I like projects and I like treating life as an experiment. I like treating things in life as an experiment, and I like those things accreting and building on themselves. One reason I love this 3D printer I'm pointing at is like the more I learn about my 3D printer, the more I'm able to do, which leads me to learn more. It's kind of a lot like what they used to call education, which is you learn enough to know what you need to learn next.
Yes.
And eventually
and
you're
go
lucky
down
you
these
learn
rabbit
how to
holes
learn.
of yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it isn't all just like, find better porn or find a way to plagiarize. It's like, again, that word, and I'm so sorry, it's such a big word for me, the incuriosity of people not seeing how the low stakes fun you can have with this. Well, you know what? Maybe it's going to become better, and maybe I won't need to say the phrase low stakes. But there's just all kinds of stuff where I can just go in and say stuff and it makes sense. So that's my prelude. My prelude.
Oh man,
is what
can
brought
I
me to
just
GPTs.
can I
Please.
pick up on the low stakes thing? So I just this morning was listening to this week's Political Gab Fest, and Emily Bazelon was
I
talking
love that
about.
show.
Oh,
Me
it's
too.
it's so good, and she
I
was
love
talking about.
John Dickerson mentioned me on there a couple months ago.
Yeah, I heard that. I remember.
He's the nicest.
John
he's the
Dickerson, who's
nicest
like
man ever.
who's both increased my vocabulary
He's so
and
decent.
and
He's
given
so
me
you can
such a
tell
love
he's
for
basically
metaphors.
decent.
Oh my God. Yeah. But anyway, she was talking about a podcast. I forget what it's called, but it's kind of examining how television series close out. I think it's called Stick the Landing. But she said at the end, she's like, what's lovely about it is it's passionate and low stakes. And I was like, what a nice combination.
Talk about a 2x2 table that I love.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
right in my quadrant.
For sure. Oh, that's awesome.
There's nothing to
Like,
be lost by caring a lot about something other people don't care about. And
oh my
I
God.
wouldn't have to say that except I feel like I do. But like
Yeah.
it's
Not on this
so
show.
well, it's just, it's funny. Like I went to this weird liberal arts school in Florida, and like the thing I often say about that school is that what I took away from it was, yeah, a little bit of like learning about Kurt Vonnegut and stuff, but also it in a way that I had not been before, it taught me to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
And that's such an ineffable thing to say, and it sounds so pretentious, which is such a bummer
Mhm.
because there's so much like of this. We all grew up, at least I grew up with all this fun. I have still had the parking sticker on my guitar case from when I was going to go to electronics school because no school would have me. And like nothing wrong, you got to fix electronics, but like I have a friend who became a big shot at NCR, like fixing cash registers. But
Mm.
like if I'm not trying to, this is not advice, but like, oh my gosh, why aren't we allowed to be curious? And why aren't we allowed to follow that? And why are we supposed to feel ashamed if we do something that other people don't immediately see as valuable?
Yeah.
And I can certainly make the case that whether it's FDM printing or GPTs, I know a butt ton more than a lot of people about stuff that's not just about FDM printers. Like
Mhm.
there's a lot of stuff you pick up when you decide to be curious.
Yes.
Giving yourself and the people in your life permission to be curious, to be vulnerable in that way of saying, like somebody was trying to like dunk on me the other day and like call me on something about like a fact. And I was like, my response was, you would be shocked how many things I am open to learning.
Yeah.
Like I am
That's
so
great.
not ashamed by you telling me a fact
No.
I haven't heard.
I love
Like
to
what?
learn.
What did you think? What did you just win?
Exactly. It's like I love it when people tell me things I didn't already know. What is annoying is when someone assumes that you're A, incurious and unwilling to try to learn things yourself, or B, like
That
take
you're
the
dumb.
knee-jerk.
You
Yes.
overlooked it. Like that feeling of like when I like it's a bee in my bonnet, but like I'll be like, oh my god, this Moby album is really good. People go, what's better is another Moby album. You're like, okay, fine, okay, or you forgot. This is so I do a thing on Spotify because I love making playlists and I love
Yeah.
music more than anything, and I do a thing called Gentle Introductions, which is like a band that I love or a band I think more
Oh,
people
I
should
love
know
that.
about.
I do a similar thing, but I didn't.
Do you? Like,
For
and you
friends
share it with
anyway.
people?
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like
yeah.
there'll be friends
That's
who.
how it started. It started out with me doing that when I did one of those for Big Star for Alex. I did
Oh,
one of
nice.
those for Richard and Linda Thompson for my wife. But here's the thing. It's called a gentle introduction. And whether that's Cheap Trick, Old 97s,
Oh.
Blondie, there's 7 and exactly 7 songs on the list because that's just a thing that I decided. So I'll say like, and again, my one about the police, here's the thing. You might have heard these songs, but if you think you know how you feel about the police, maybe check out this playlist because these 7 songs might help you feel something different about the police,
Right.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And of course, invariably, they'll understandably, people are playing with me in the space and they'll be like, you forgot X, you forgot
You're like,
Y.
no, but that's not the point. It's like
How
it's
is Roxanne not on your list?
because this is gentle introduction. Like
yeah, and like people are familiar with
Roxanne.
Roxanne, but I'll bet a lot fewer people realize how much they could love Truth Hits Everybody. Like, are there people out there who enjoy music like we enjoy and maybe have never really heard the very good first album by the Police? I lost my virginity to Can't Stand Losing You. I imprinted on that album. Like,
Yeah.
but like, you know what I'm saying? And I understand why people do that. I understand, again, who needs context anymore when we have keyboards? But like, it's frustrating sometimes that does feel, I hate to say like, oh, I'm so put upon, but it really does feel like people are constantly there to go like, my certainty about what I know and who I am trumps everybody's vulnerability, interest, and curiosity. And I'm always there to crush the bunny for anybody. I'm not just saying like yuck on a yum, although that's part of it. But like, it's just there are people who seem to think it's like their job to set you straight on something you're stupid about. And I don't have the time or inclination to say, not only am I not stupid about that, you're being a little short-sighted about that. And I don't have time to hold your dick for an hour and explain why that's the terms of service
20 minutes
on every
tops.
Apple app.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece of it too, right? Like there's the curiosity piece. That's like, what do you not love story? Because I feel like that's what this is. Like last night, a friend told me this amazing story. He was in an airport and he had been a host of like a HCTV show for a while, right? And he was in an airport and he gets a tug on his sleeve and he turns around and it's fucking Robert Duvall, right?
Amazing.
And Robert Duvall says to him, "Hey, are you that guy on the show?"
Somebody who's talent on an HGTV show?
No, like a host on the show.
Okay, but like somebody who's like an on-air person.
Yeah.
So like Robert Duvall has watched the show basically, right? Like, and so he says, he doesn't say I'm Robert Duvall. He's like, "Hey, are you the guy from the bathroom show?" And he's like, "Well, yeah, yeah, I am. And then what
Are
came to
you the
him
guy from the bathroom
and
show?
and what came to him, and this is
I
not a
would
bit.
kill to hear Robert Duvall say that in an
And,
airport.
this is not a bit that he came up with. This is what he froze on. He said, "Are you the guy from Days of Thunder?" And so
Fuck yeah.
I love that story. To which he, of course, he just kind of goes, "Well,
He's not
yeah."
a wartime consigliere.
He,
I think
he
that's
goes,
something
"No,
we
he's
can
not a
all agree
wartime
on.
consul." He goes,
No.
yeah, but anyway."
By the way, I
show.
love your pictures.
Yeah,
I
which is
admire
what
your
which is
pictures.
what he ends up saying to him. He's like, "Well, anyway, I
Oh
love
my
your show."
God. He
And
went
so
full
anyway,
bomb on him.
and my friend was, of course, like, I mean, I think this is a perfect story, but he was horrified after he left. He's like, "Well,
That is
also
a
you're the."
perfect.
But it's I told him, I said, "You may have even made a memory for Robert Duvall, right? Like, who says?"
I did a talk at
1000%.
Max. I did a talk at Max FunCon, which is a thing. And anyways, I talk about creativity. And I think the title of the talk was "With All Due Respect to the Seduction Community." And it was about what I had identified as the fetishism of certain things in the world of productivity and increasingly creativity. And I finished the talk, and this little imp ran. This is a humble brag, but it's something I think about a lot because I really love this person's work. Is like this little imp, this little forest creature runs up to me, and I've been talking about creativity, and I've been talking about ways to realize that you have more creativity. Like I say now, like you write more than you realize. Like you write so much and you don't know it, and you think that's. But like this little forest creature runs up to me and goes, "I used to do morning pages from that book, The Artist's Way," and the person ran away. And it was Maria Bamford, who is absolutely one of my favorite comedians. Like
also morning
out of the
pages,
house,
yes.
I'll just watch a bunch of Maria. I'll just watch the Christmas special with Burton Blassie.
Yeah.
She's absolutely one of my favorite people. It becomes more so every year or so as she talks more about OCD, and like she's such a fascinating person. But like everybody I used to say this when people were running around looking at their site meter and their Google Analytics, and it's like, that's fine, that's really good, especially but like once you find out, first time John Gruber tells you he would link to this if you fix the typo, that is a big day.
Yeah.
Because in several ways. One is that both Gruber and I eventually learned will not link to things if it's got a really bad typo. And he's like, "Hey, just heads up, if you fix the typo, I'll link to this." Not because, ooh, thirsty, I'm going to be on Daring Fireball, but more like, I don't fucking care. Sorry. I don't care, but
You can
like,
curse.
I admire that piece of shit so much. I used to. Now I'm friends with him and it's the worst. But seriously, when somebody you admire notices what you do,
Yeah.
like there is nothing like that.
Greatest.
Not just to like give you a hard on about how you're famous. That's not what I'm saying.
No, you feel
Yeah.
seen and you feel like, oh my God, like I had this.
And you feel you're having an impact with
That's what I'm
people that
saying,
you
yeah.
care about.
That's
you
what- yeah,
never
exactly.
would have known otherwise.
Like when I created the Blogsmith bundle for TextMate,
Oh,
and
ever.
I got
So
this
good.
I got this comment on my GitHub repo, not directly to me, but on my GitHub repo, and it just said "Jesus Christ" and Merlin Mann, and I was like, this is back. This is back in like
was that our first pseudo
It was
interaction?
2007, I want to
this
say.
is
Yeah.
like 2004, and I was like, "Holy shit!" This guy I'm reading on 43 folders,
Yeah.
just like
I love
commented
TextMate. I didn't
on
know how
my
to do the first thing
GitHub
in
repo.
Ruby. I didn't know how to do the first thing in Ruby, but seeing DHH's at that time quite famous demo
Yes.
of Ruby on
I
Rails.
use
What was
TextMate.
Ruby
I
on
use
Rails?
TextMate because of that demo.
I was like, forget about development. Like, what is this app?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
It's
I
so
was like,
funny.
I was like in college, and I was just like, holy shit, what is this? I love text editors now.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Okay, my final question for you about GPT, and like
Right.
just to no, this is great. Believe me, this is great. To
I'm
first of
sorry,
all,
how
to
I
close
am.
out. No, this is
I'm
great.
like,
This is
it's like I've got measles. I just show up and everybody gets sick.
no one's sick. This is
We loved it.
fantastic, and I'm just continuing an amazingly winding thread, which is the only way I think or talk. So you go home to your Chat GPT and you go, all right, Robert Duvall, this happened in I think it was like 20.
This is the time,
right?
Talking about
Yeah.
the timeline.
So like, how far is like Days of Thunder from there, right?
Right.
And inside of Days of Thunder, how far was he on either end from a truly great movie, right? Like, where did this,
Yes.
when he's sitting there horrified because he's like, oh, he's also in The Apostle, he's also in The Godfather, right? Like, but where does all this sit? Because that helps me to think, how did he process, oh, are you the guy from Days of Thunder, right? Because he had by that point done another like 15 movies.
Oh my God, yeah.
None of which were amazing.
My
but
kid and I talk about that with my kid with Chevy Chase, where like my kid knows Chevy Chase from Community.
Community, yeah,
Full stop.
of course.
That's amazing.
And I
Well,
know
how else
Chevy
would he?
Chase from everything before Community? And what's
I was gonna
interesting is
say-
that ends up, yeah.
I was going to say, does he know him from the vacation movies at all? Because I could see a Community I would see is the main thing, but I didn't know if like you forced the family to watch Christmas Vacation.
No, I mean, my kid has seen Confess Fletch twice, but never seen Fletch.
Oh my God.
But you end up with these
Which
that's a
understand.
really good movie, by the way.
Doctor.
That's just so you know, the John Hamm movie, Confess Fletch, is very good.
Yeah, it is
Which I have
These
not
two-
seen.
These two pie graphs were 90% of what I know. Anyway, I'm just trying to make a point. But like what I know about Chevy Chase, like was fully formed. Certainly wasn't helped by reading the oral history of SNL.
Oh no, that's a great book.
But he's currently reading Colin Jost's book, Very Punchable Face, and it's very.
Oh wow.
But like everything I know about is pretty much from before 1986, and everything he knows is from one TV show.
Yeah.
And I always have to sort of avoid the thing to go be the ball Danny and like, my kid's not going to enjoy Caddyshack. Why would I even bother? But like that's for him. I bet he's not a young man.
Sure.
No,
How old is he? Let's find
He's
out.
not a young man.
probably 77. I'm guessing.
Okay. Anybody else? How old is? I'm going to say 82. He was in The Godfather. Oh wait, let's see.
He's 80. So we were literally right in the middle.
All right.
Or are you talking
I'll
about?
allow
Oh, that's
it.
Chevy Chase. Robert Duvall is probably older than that. Robert Duvall is probably like in his 80s. Yeah.
What was he in before The Godfather?
Oh
I'm not-
shit!
was he
Robert
in
Duvall is
Bonnie and Clyde?
93.
Whoa! Gene Wilder was in Bonnie and Clyde. That always screws me.
Yeah.
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 Gene Wilder, Warren Beatty.
Because if I was going to guess the Gene, it would have been
Yeah.
Hackman.
Yeah. Not Sybil Shepherd. The other one.
He was in Superman.
Yes.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Some people can read a candy wrapper and understand the secrets of the world.
Do you
Love
use
that guy.
Do you use Chat GPT or Custom GPT to make these spreadsheets now?
Good question. No. I mean, I feel like there's still
And
so
why?
much. Good question. Google Sheets is my oils in life. Like I think ever since whenever, God, it wasn't even Excel, but there was this Mac spreadsheets program that I used to use. Don't even try to help me. It was like, this is when I was making Gantt charts, like back when I was a project manager. But like, it's just that when I first learned, especially about like pivot tables, which for a long time were very hard to do on a Mac, unless you had like full on real Excel. But like the way that you like, okay, this is really like it's kind of like a database, but I can like see it all at once.
It's like Hogwarts shit.
Yes, and for something like the first day. This sounds crazy now, but the first day you learn about like a formula, but then you also learn like equals, A2 minus A3. Times this, convert that.
This could be ASMR for me. If you just said that a little quieter, I'd listen to it for hours.
Yeah, let's see here. I think I can do this.
Is that the actual?
Merlin, have you ever
work days?
Have you ever used Power BI or Looker or Tableau or anything like that?
Those are all made up. Those are all completely.
No. Okay. So
my
the
answer is
reason.
no.
Okay. So the reason I asked.
So what is it? Portishead, Tab Boy? What are they called? What am I doing?
Yeah. So they're all three of them are different things. The reason I was asking, these are like, I guess they're known as like business intelligence apps. That's
like
BI,
not PKI or whatever it's called.
I guess so. Like
kill ratio of your business. How's your sales funnel?
Well, it can, but the thing is like the
business
reason
intelligence.
the reason I asked is because like Power BI, which is kind of a nightmare, but also it uses Excel pretty well, and there's some other ones. The reason that's why I mentioned the other two.
Are these gonna be in notes?
Oh yeah. I can put this in notes.
Okay.
Please do.
The reason I asked is because if you're into all of this like Gantt charts and tables and whatnot, like those tools basically let you do that sort of thing and then go beyond and like make interactive dashboards and shit based on your data.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've used your sponsor as well as another app that you mentioned for things like that. I would love to hear more about that. But so I think I'm still leaving one interesting unanswered question, which is like, why do this?
Why not? Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry, go on.
No, you didn't at all. I'm sorry. I'm the interrupter.
No.
I like I say, I pretty instantly realized what I could use this for. And can I just say in passing, I would not have realized, and here I'm talking about GPTs, which is a terrible name for this,
Oh, it's the worst.
but like having your own chatbot that's
Mhm.
your stuff and the way you want it to be. I was only able to instantly grok what that would be useful for, fun for me, because I'd spent some time already in regular ChatGPT. I'd learned the ups and downs. I'd learned the strange melancholy you feel when your thread stops remembering you. It was
Yeah.
like a weirdly emotional experience. The first time we seemed to have
We
such a
talked
good
about
relationship.
this.
It's real. It's very real.
Mhm.
And then like the struggle in some ways to go like, and in a minute, I guess we'll probably get to this health one I've made, which is far and away my biggest focus right now. I struggle in a GPT even with getting it to remember what it knows. I struggle to get it to remember all these various things. And I'm trying all these different sorts of hacks to do that, the equivalent basically of cron jobs to tell it to remember to always follow these instructions. And then it still suddenly goes like to quote Westwood, it looks like nothing to me. There's still
Well, it's like
times where
someone
it's
in
like,
memory care. You're kind of like, no, you do know this. Like you know.
which it doesn't help to say over and over, just let them talk about Glenn Miller and like
Yeah,
don't be a jerk about it.
exactly.
Read a book called The 36-Hour Day. It's really good. But the so one just to, so like here's a good example is this thing I've done for my health. So I was in the hospital. As I've talked about so many other places. All you need to know is that like I like data and I like being alive. And so one of the first things I did was using a variety of apps, including Apple Health and some apps that let you export things. I exported a lot of my up-to-date vitals into JSON, eventually just settled on JSON, put that into this thing, and then try to really help it learn what I want to do with this. The biggest challenge is, like I say, is getting it to remember. Dude, you understand JSON so much more than you realize. I've even told you to remember. So like like when something wouldn't work right and then it would work right, like this is how you use ChatGPT. I would say, hey, you just nailed that. Whatever you just did that time, tell me what you did. And I will basically create a prompt that I can then tell you so you can remember. And I eventually went so far as to create a document called orders.md and created a command inside of what I call my toolbox, long story, but I can say eat your vegetables. And every time I say eat your vegetables, it rereads my orders format and then goes, oh, that's right. You like line graphs with big labels. But like it is kind of frustrating. And yet I still get benefits from it. Sometimes
Yeah.
those benefits, because again, the phrase I used with Alex on Do by Friday this week, the problem with GPT is sometimes you're in a cursed thread and don't know it.
Yep.
Like
Yes.
some threads are
You
better than
have
others.
to just clean it.
It's
and
like a
start over.
seed in like what do they call that? Like a seed to start off in, not in encryption, but like you're in a curse thread is the main thing to know. And some days
Yeah.
it's good and some days it's not. It's a lot like my grandma with Alzheimer's. But like some days it's just like it's incredible. And I'll be able to associate things. And then one day, like, okay, finally on this, I had this idea after weeks of working on this because it matters. Like I was getting blood tests 3 times a week. I'd had an MRI. I'd had a CT scan. There was still not any mutual, like, huge assent on what was wrong with me. And the only thing I could trust was my shrink and my data. And so, like, that's what I was focusing on, to be able to visualize things, look for patterns that existed in ways that, like, I couldn't say to like somebody who's like a fucking 28-year-old try hard, hey, the relationship between my ALT and my bilirubin, like, is that looking the way it should look? Because I know the bilirubin should go up as the ALT and the AST go down, but like, how does that work? And then, but all I have to say to this thing, if it's the right thread, is just go, find interesting and novel things in my results. But here's what I did. And I posted about this, but like this was Alex is always talking about like, oh, tell it that it's a Unabomber and it'll make you a bomb. And I'm like, oh, whatever, okay. But in this instance, I said, hey, just for the next 10 minutes, you're an extreme skeptic of AI in general, and GPT, generative AI in particular. You're also knowledgeable about all different sides of the debate about this, and you're up to date on who's making the most. Listen to every fucking syllable of this. You're up to date on the most recent persuasive ideas about the ups, the downs, whatever. I made this really good prompt, and then it killed it. So then I was able to say to it, I said, so how do you feel about it? Like, blah, blah, blah.
Amazing.
But I was able to say to this thing, now read my test results and tell something. I write better than I think. I said something like, now please rescan my test results and point out I said, no, this is so weird. And this is so like, I was encouraging it to realize that it is an AI, for lack of a better. It is an AI that has access to all of this stuff, but that is the AI, that is the content. But I also said, you have access to all of this data. You have access to everything you know about me. Audit how you've been doing. Look at what I gave you and tell me the things that are most likely to raise a red flag with people who are other skeptics of AI, which I
It's
never would have
so
thought to do if I hadn't spent time with
Yeah.
this.
it's
And it was
so
fascinating,
interesting to me,
including
and
stuff like
also
pointing out test results that somebody missed. Like,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah.
this shouldn't be this high when that's that high. This mitigates
Right.
against the differential diagnosis. Like, it looks like it is acute hepatitis A. But like telling it to be like that. Now, why did it work that one time and not other times? I don't know. I didn't make it. I can't approve of this. But if you don't think that's interesting, you are not welcome at my lunch table.
It's so interesting to me, and also so obvious that you have to tell ChatGPT what its bias is. Like, it's fascinating that you can even do that. But like
Unless
most
you
of
can do
the
it at all. Of
good,
course, there are
m-
barriers. Last night I
most of
had
the
it. Go ahead.
most of the prompt tutorials I've seen have started out with you explain to ChatGPT what its perspective, what its role is, and then you move forward. And that's kind of fascinating.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, again, and the problem is, and I know we're not doing this, but like, if it becomes, I'm going to send you a link to something on Mastodon if you don't mind.
Sure.
If it becomes something where we all just start associating this, and I'm probably contributing to this, carrying water for the worst people, but like, if you start thinking that this is really just something that people use to cheat on things, it's like, well, there's a lot of ways you can cheat on
Yeah.
things, and talk about throwing out
There's
the baby with
so
the
many
bath.
ways.
I
It's
mean,
just
and that's the
amazing.
thing. People are going to cheat with or without this stuff. Now, will this make some of it easier? Yeah, okay, maybe. But like, come
Maybe
on,
it'll
like,
also make teachers revisit the kind of
yes,
assignments that they do.
no fucking
Not
shit.
because of
Yes,
ChatGPT, just because maybe they've been flipping the same 3-ring
switch.
binder for fucking 20 years.
I had this conversation with my mom a year ago when we were in Las Vegas for Adele for her 75th birthday. I was explaining,
Ooh.
which was a
Wow.
great trip. Yeah,
Adele is
I
75.
would
Yeah,
know.
that's her record. Her new
That
record's
is a record.
75.
Yeah,
That,
new record
exactly.
75. It's great. Yeah.
The heartbreak on this one really came through.
Nailed it.
You wouldn't think that, you know, in the septuagenarian years that she would still be able to write bangers, but yeah.
Way to roll with that.
It's just in her.
I think she does real well. There's good days and bad days, just like with grandma.
Honestly. No, but I was explaining ChatGPT and all that stuff to my mom because this was like January of 2023, and so it was like, you know, 6 weeks old, and she immediately picked up on some of the like the cheating stuff, and I was like, yes. I was like, however, and she agreed with me because she used to work in education, not as a teacher, but with teachers, and she's a school counselor, but you know, we both agreed. I was like, well, maybe, you know, a lot of teachers suck. Like, let's just be straight up honest. I know I'm not supposed to say that. I know
But
I'm
that
supposed to
was
be
her
like,
first thing she caught was like, you didn't have to say anything. Did she immediately go like, well, people could abuse this? It was her
yes,
first. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But then she was able to at least. But I said to her, and she agreed with me when she kind of thought about it. I was like, yeah, I was like, but this could be an opportunity. Like, if it's so easy for you to cheat, you know, using these things,
You're putting that
then
better than I
maybe
did. Yes.
then maybe we should be focusing on a different way of,
Or maybe
you know,
we go all the way up the stack to like who gets into the school. Because if you're attracting that many people who are willing to pay N dollars a year for this, or well,
right.
it's public school, but like if you're getting people like, I realize now if I could redo college, I would treat it so much more seriously. The non-traditional age students who were there, like they got divorced and then went to college at
Oh no, they
50.
cared. Yeah.
And they're spending, that's
Yeah.
their money every time they
Well,
skip short story class.
the
Yep.
second high school I went to, not the shitty first one that was super competitive and supposed to be so great. I was going to graduate early. I wound up not because I had a great experience, but it was actually full of teachers who cared. And most of the students who were there were not high achievers like me who happen to have mental health issues, but were like drug addicts who, you
It's
know,
not just a
didn't come
bad
back to
school, but the
school.
wrong school for you. Kind of.
No. This was the new school, which actually was the right one.
Oh, the second school. Sorry.
The second school was full of like people who had drug problems, had dropped out, like pregnant teenage girls, like people who, to be completely honest, still went through all this shit and wanted to graduate and actually showed the fuck up. And I have more respect.
Like we don't appreciate how much your life outside of school has such an impact on school,
and
whether
I
that's
have more
food or
respect.
abuse.
No, and I have more respect for those kids who I went to school with at that second school than the fucking assholes at the first school who were just like me, who were privileged as fuck, who were like taught to believe that you will be a high achiever and do everything. Fuck all of us. Like the ones who actually like had real problems and dropped out and then came back or were pregnant and like went to school and then like had a baby and still kept going to school, you know, because the school had on-site childcare. Those kids actually wanted to be there. Like, you know what I mean? Like those are
I
the real fucking kids.
absolutely.
And the teachers, to the same point, cared and they taught based on those things. And I didn't have AP classes there, but I had teachers who were very, very good who would give me different assignments because they realized, okay, you're past all of the stuff I'm teaching you. So I'm going to grade you differently and I'm going to give you different curriculum. And obviously not every teacher can do that, and No Child Left Behind fucked up a lot of things with funding tied to test scores, and the whole
Right.
you know public education system is fucked. But if it's so easy to cheat at these things, and if you can so clearly like get this grade, then maybe that means we need to have a bigger, like broader, like discussion about how are we grading things, what are we assigning, and like what are we doing, because this is a symptom, this is
You're,
not a
you're talking about
cause.
something that creates a lot more work for people who are already working a lot. Like
Yeah, but at the
if you
same
had to do
time
more
it's
essays that were
yeah.
very specific, again, it's a distinction without a difference to almost everybody I know. But like I'm not as interested in like how do you feel today. I'm way more interested in how do you know how you feel today. Asking somebody to talk about that in their own terms, I know it's still cheatable, but like who's
Yeah,
going to want to do that when you could just have
right.
somebody as Scantron?
No, and if you're actually like, to me, it's also, again, it's just one of those things. It's like if we stopped, if we stopped fucking teaching tests and grading things based on that, then it'd be a whole lot harder for these tools to also work so effortlessly to cheat. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
but I think also like the stakes would be lower too if people feel like, oh, I actually am engaged and want to learn, then like you're less likely to want to do it. Most of the time, people cheat for two reasons. I think one, just like laziness, and but the big thing is just you don't care. You're not invested,
A lot
right?
of people, one of the things about privilege we don't talk about enough, and that's not a word I love, but I do get what we're talking about. So you talk about like people who got into the good school, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe let's say that's even 5 years into being a good school, which is a very
Yep.
specific kind of thing in San Francisco. I mean, everybody knows that's a good school. And then like even before we get into like, oh yeah, and how are the moms and dads having an impact on how people run that school?
Mm-hmm.
Like before we even get
Mhm.
into that, uh, there's just this thing of like sometimes you meet people. I'm not trying to be unkind to rich people or privileged people, but like there are people who love to talk about grit. Oh, you
And
kid
never
needs more
experienced
grit.
it.
Well, what they've experienced is a pretty assured. First of all, they've never missed a meal. They've never worried where they're going to sleep. They've never had dirty clothes or smelled weird this day,
Right.
or like had to sleep in the garage because something was going on with the like. I look fine, whatever. I'm a liberal. What do I know? But the challenging part of that is like I think sometimes people of privilege who love to congratulate themselves about their bootstraps and their startup and all that kind of stuff, like really look past like a different way. I look at it differently. I think a lot of people who are very well off and have a good background, like why is your kid so good at tennis? Well, because his dad's Andre Agassi.
Right.
Like that's part of it. And what does that
Mhm.
mean? That also means they have the resources to send that kid
Oh,
to
exactly.
tennis
They
school.
the resources to have the lessons, to have the time to be able to
Right.
dedicate and focus on it, to recognize that he had a talent
This is
and to
not even
send
the
them to
mean
those
part
things.
yet. This is not the
Right.
mean
Yeah.
part. Here's the mean part, which is like there's a lot of fucking chodes out there who were born on third, as they once said. Somebody once said about President Bush, born on third and thinks he hit a triple. There's a lot of people, and that's fine, whatever. Like enjoy it, but you're not allowed to invoke grit because
Yes.
essentially your whole life has been a so far uninterrupted path to success and money and all of those things. The grit required for you to get into Harvard is a lot different, especially if your parents went there. It's a lot different than the grit that's required to get through third grade
Mhm.
I
in schools
No,
in San
totally.
Francisco.
And
It's
I
a different
find
thing until like it's frustrating to me. It leaves such a bad taste in my mouth. The way we're constantly announcing that all these people, and it's like it's survivor bias. Like
yeah.
these are the planes that came back. Of course they have this pattern in the wings. The survivor bias of like being somebody who just happened to like have the resources and continuity of care in their life to just fucking show up and then go to college. That's such a bigger deal than somebody whose mom has 4 jobs and they have to get
Right.
Wi-Fi at McDonald's. And it's like you talk about grit. You don't even know what somebody is going through to get to just being able to show up at school. And it infuriates me.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree, and I think that most people who talk about grit are the reason I'm being reflexive and saying, like, and maybe somewhat unfair, but I think it's largely true. Haven't experienced it is because when you have gone through things, even if you have privilege, even if you were born on third, that doesn't mean that you haven't experienced hardships, haven't struggled with things.
Sure,
but you won't
absolutely.
invoke that. You're not going to invoke that.
And you
I
generally
think,
won't do it until you've become successful.
Well,
how many people who are successful TED Talk givers who love talking about failure have never succeeded at all?
Right.
Not many. They're now at a position where they get to go, boy, it was really hard at my first startup. We were really underutilized and our B round was, and you're like, oh my gosh, you are so out of tune with the rest of the world. And you think that you're winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
We should go. We're going to go soon. Can we go soon? Did you guys get my bird?
Okay. So wait, you can't go without, so that bird, not only a good bit, but really powerful. And I talk about it, describe it.
So I said, last night I was doing one of my occasional like updates of like, I exported my JSON file, put it up, and I said, blah, blah, do this. Brilliant. And I was just playing along. And then I had this funny thought where I was like, and like, this is the kind of thing I say I'm surprised other people don't do this more, but I'm actually really surprised that I don't do this more because I know I can do this. So I said to it something like, please scan, the phrase I use, whether or not it helps or not, please deeply analyze fileblah.json and fileblah.json, use the schema that I gave you, Please deeply analyze all of these documents. And then I was like, write a haiku summarizing my health records. And it wasn't very good. And then I said something longer. I said, please write a villanelle, like a longer form type of poem. And that went okay. And then I said, now please write a really dirty limerick about it. And it was like, I can't do dirty things, but it'd be so funny if a guy got his head stuck in a bucket. But it was also about my Billy Rubin levels. That would be funny. And then finally I was like, fuck it. I was like, and this is preceded by things you don't see that included like, please deeply analyze all my health records since November and produce a Hieronymus Bosch painting. And here's 2 photos of me. Put me in it and make me a bird.
And it did.
And then it came back and I said, now please,
because this is brilliant.
Then I was like, please make the bird sadder and angrier. And then like to show that this actually does work. And then I had to go look this up. I didn't know this off the dome. I was like, oh, focus is a triptych, right? 3 paintings in one. Like, please focus on the third part of the triptych, which is called Of Gardener of Earthly Delight, which is called The Last Judgment, which is the good one that has like the walking assholes and people peeing and crying.
Yep.
Yeah, watch some YouTube videos on Bosch. He had a hell of a thing going. And I love all of my birds. These are all my precious little guys now. And the thing is, you can't see it maybe, but like if you really zoom in, there's great stuff in the background, but also something I didn't realize until after I posted this, you can see the brush strokes. In some of these, you can actually see where it looks like a painting.
Which is
it didn't just open it up in Affinity Designer or whatever and trace it. I love Affinity Designer, but it didn't just trace it. Like it made this thing and it made it look like a painting.
Yeah. No, the stuff is amazing. So what did you use? Did you just use DALL-E 2 for this, or what did you use to create this?
DALL-E is turned on in this GPT, and because this is it's a good question. The reason it's in this GPT is this is the one that has all my health stuff in it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I got it. So you named your own custom GPT lab insight. Okay.
Yeah. Lab results.
No. This is on me. I didn't look at it closely. So listeners, if you look at the Mastodon,
good bird though. You got to admit,
pretty great bird.
A couple of good birds in there.
No, but this I think ties back into
sad and angry.
But I think this ties back into.
Did you see the little guy in the corner?
It's so
good.
The
little orange guy. How cute!
Or the one coming at you
like,
in the upper left in the first one.
No, the little orange guy. He's just so cute.
The bird.
Yeah.
There's a big bird coming at me. Yeah, I think that's the woman in the hospital who once asked me, "Do you fart?"
You haven't answered the question.
That actually really encapsulates a lot of my hospital experience as being who I am. Was like, do I? No, and not for like stupid reasons, but for like, do I fart? Like, can I fart? Have I farted? Did I just fart? Other questions you get asked in the hospital. Have you had any contact with people?
I try not to.
No, but like, wait, so why are you asking me that? Yes, I have had contact with people. I'm generally in one of these 2 places, but like, have I been on a bus in the last 6 weeks? What period of time? How many people? Was I sick at the time? It's like, is this your first day? Have you just never asked them, do you fart? What an odd thing to ask in the middle of the night. House would know better. House would hit me with his goddamn cane.
Sure.
You know.
Oh, we didn't even get to talking about House.
That's my House impression.
That's good.
Oh, wait, house ASMR.
Everybody shake your pills.
So should we skip gratitude this week? We're at 2
Like
hours.
Merlin and I
already.
just hit it.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
No, I'm fading. I like all the apps. I like everything you do.
Exactly.
Everything.
Well, almost everything. I have some objections, but
We don't want to
like
end that.
honestly, the input devices on my machine are frequently doing Brett things, and it's
I mean, this is for all of us.
Yeah.
yeah.
amazing.
No, I mean like I don't know what to say that doesn't sound corny, except that like. I mean, it's almost kind of like a full system. I mean, there's stuff that I'm doing in the Finder. There's stuff that I don't want to like go on about it, but it's really been a big deal for me, and I'm so grateful for all of that and like what it's enabled me to do and who it's enabled me to be, and I'm just eternally grateful. You piece of shit. Ska. You played ska, really?
I asked on the forums at forums.brettterpstra.com. I asked, does anyone actually use what I build? Does anyone here who's joined the forum actually use what I build? Because I don't get a lot. I don't like embed analytics or anything. Yeah. And the people who came back were like, I use this and this and this and this thing you made.
And
like
6 things I can't tease out.
That you totally forgot you ever made.
It's the end of It's a Wonderful Life. And they're bringing you a literal basket of money going, of course we love you.
Awesome.
It was enlightening. Yeah. Things I forgot I ever even worked on. Yeah.
Every time a bell rings, Brett gets an in-app purchase.
Genuinely, yeah. Well, hey, but do you remember, Brett, when we had and maybe because I remember I even got a Mashable write-up for you on it. Remember Brett Terpstra Day?
Yes, I do. Gabe Weatherhead.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Back in the day. It was for a couple years. It was a great birthday, and then
Drifter.
It fell off.
Drifter.
Yeah, Mac Drifter.
Yeah, Mac Drifter was such a great blog. I first got into Synology stuff because of Gabe.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Talk about a rabbit hole. My next item on my list is to figure out my dynamic DNS and why it's not working and why I can't access things locally again.
Oh God, have you used Tailscale at all?
I have used Tailscale. I'm not using it now. Do you feel like that's a good way to handle that? And okay, because I like the people who make it, and it seems really.
I know them. I know.
Isn't that what's his head? Isn't that the guy from the thing? The guy from isn't that Maycheck does it?
Yeah, and also
Miché, sorry.
Yeah, Miché, and also Brad Fitzpatrick of Go, Memcached, and most importantly, LiveJournal fame.
Oh my God, I just had a neurological. Please say all of those things just as fast one more time. Let's start with Brad.
But end with LiveJournal, because that landed me nice.
Like you just went into pure like Yosemite Sam can't, like thieves can't. Like you just went into Brassa Frassa Snaggle Brassa. Brad Garrett. Oh yeah, check that out. That sounds cool.
Yeah, no,
I think I know that guy from LiveJournal.
Yeah, exactly. Brad Fitzpatrick. Well, he created LiveJournal, but he also created Memcached because
what?
Yeah,
what?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. He created Memcached so that LiveJournal could stay up, and now.
This is like when WordPress realizes it needed a cache.
I mean, that's what WordPress used, and also
I've been thinking.
I got fireballed last night.
Yeah. So yeah, he did that. He was on the Go team for like a dozen years, and
I love LiveJournal. Oh my God,
yeah,
I'll
me
be
too.
so grateful to LiveJournal.
OG Tumblr.
There's still not an app to this day that understands how you want to be able to share things as much.
No, I completely agree.
Custom groups,
custom friends list, fucking A.
Yeah, and I made a custom CSS header that I would drop into the top. This is because I'm broken inside. It was the year 2000, whatever. And I would drop things into the top of the header that would say, this is a friends only post and cut, and say like, this is something only you can see. So please don't share this and that kind of stuff. And
no,
it was amazing.
It was the best. It to this day, like nobody ever accomplished, as you said, like being able to post to select groups. You could do friends, friends only, but you could also have like a subsect only these friends, right? Like I don't want my roommate who's on my friends list to see that I'm bitching about her, which is like a real thing that, when you're in college.
Journal. What do you think it's for? What do you think? Is this Blogger?
Exactly. Well, that's the whole thing.
I'm not linking to Jason Kottke. I'm talking about my goddamn roommate.
Exactly.
And also the music I'm listening to.
And a handful of Russians.
God, have you heard Paramore?
Are you listening? Well, the Russians came after the
man, did they come.
The Russians are coming. Yes.
Well, yeah, they bought it from.
That was the real Red Dawn.
Fucked up.
That was the
Yeah.
true red diamond. And to quote the character, I'd piss on a spark.
Yes. Yes.
But anyway, but yeah, no, but Brad works on tail scale as well as some of the
Well,
other
tell him I
people,
said hi.
so, I will.
Okay, tail
but
scale.
anyway,
I'll look
tail
at
scale,
that.
you should
And
look at that.
I've got the package. Pardon my saying.
Mm.
I've got the package and I played with it a little bit. Matt Howie first, I think, turned me on to it. And but once I do that, like here in my little officina, there's a thing. And then I'm home, I've got a thing. And without regard to things like IP range, any of that stuff, that and my phone, that all becomes part of one tail scale
Yes,
sort of thing, right?
correct.
Anybody else? Does this get your okie dokie?
No, but I was just told I
Nope.
needed to start last week.
Nope. I love Tails.
It's running on my machine right
Right.
now. It's just turned off.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, I turned
Okay.
Brett onto it, I think.
Where do you start with turning it on?
You can turn
Does
it
it
on
matter?
wherever. It doesn't matter. I mean, I would put it on kind of your Synology or whatever, but you can have it set up
Yeah.
and you can link
No, I did. Like I
things.
said, I've got the package on all of them. It's just I didn't want to, because I'm already so screwed up, and a thing I'm trying to work on. Shut up, John Syracuse. I know you won't hear this, but like my problem is like I don't want to just start. The way I think of it is tearing wires out of the wall. Speaking of Gene Hackman, have you ever seen the movie? The
Oh my
Conversation?
God.
Oh
Like
yeah,
I don't want to
fucking
just
great.
end up playing my saxophone in a room full of water. And sometimes when I'm just like, I can fix that with a tail scale. I just need another reverse proxy for my reverse proxy. And like pretty soon I can't leave my office. It's getting like David Gilbert and his gaming
100%.
setup. I feel like it's all just getting smaller and smaller.
Beautiful.
Can we all leave?
Well, hey,
Thank you, Merlin.
Merlin. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for showing up today. It's been great chatting.
Pleasure.
We will definitely
So
try
nice
to
to meet
invite
you,
you
Jeff,
back
and nice
if
to
you'll
catch
have
back up.
us.
I'm a fan of you. I've only met Jeff today, but I'm a fan of both you guys. So thank you for your
Thank you
kindness.
for joining
and
us. This was really
Yeah,
fun.
thanks, Merlin.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Hey, everybody, get some sleep.
Mm.
Get some sleep.
Mhm.
The system is going
There it is.
down now.
Oh, here's you.
Higher, higher.
Oh, is it more like a Joy Division kind of thing?